The opinions expressed by tonight's guest do not represent the opinions or position of Spaced Out Radio, syndicated carriers, or anyone associated with SOR Media. Listener discretion is advised. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we are about to take you higher. Broadcasting from the Rocky Mountains of Colorado to you listening around the world. This is Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa Nicole Thomas. You can follow Tessa on our Facebook page at Spaced Out Radio, on Twitter at TessaTNT, and you can subscribe to her YouTube channel. Go to youtube.com/Spaced Out Radio for the archive. But we break on command 'cause women rule the world. Buckle up, space travelers. Let the countdown begin.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
It's time to go for a ride with host Tessa Nicole Thomas.
I'm such a lucky guy, 'cause after all this time, it's like the deeper I go, the deeper I fall. Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening, Spaced Out Radio. Secure your tinfoil hats, buckle down tight, and hold on loosely as we soar over the rocky tops of the La Platas on a Rocky Mountain high. Get sucked into the vortex of the Four Corners and settle down snugly at mile marker 419.9 in colorful Colorado. It is Saturday, October 13th, Sunday, October 14th for those of you on the East Coast and beyond. And this is Spaced Out Radio. Hope you had a rockin' week, an awesome day, and an even better evening. I am your host, TessaTNT, and I am live tonight broadcasting from beautiful Bayfield, Colorado. We are 1,000 strong nightly on Spaced Out Radio Network, spacedoutradio.com, Spreaker, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, as well as Deep Talk Radio, which you can find at deeptalkradio.com. Don't forget to head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, where you can peruse the Spaced Out Radio store and read the encounter online, dealing with everything strange, paranormal, and odd. So tonight, I have a treat for all my guys and gals out there. Tonight, we will be talking to and getting to know Mr. Rich Horn from Colorado Paratech. With over 30 years of experience in the paranormal field, Rich Horn has been working with several paranormal investigation teams and individuals over the years. In 2009, he formed Colorado Paratech to experiment with new techniques and new technologies to gather more information about the paranormal. That same year, Ghost Light night vision lights created by Colorado Paratech to advance and the quality of filming in total darkness, as well as explore other night spectra for use in the field. Now in their 6th generation, ghost lights are used worldwide by not only paranormal investigators, but also by movie and TV studios, law enforcement, forensic and private investigators, by nature, entertainment, and art photographers, by biologists, and wildlife conservationists, and more. Colorado Paratech continues to expand research in the paranormal, as well as night vision and other technology. Rich also continues to work with paranormal and historical organizations to document and preserve historical locations. So Rich, it's so great to have you on tonight. How are you doing?
Hi, Tessa. Hi, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me.
No worries. I'm so glad to have you on and to learn more about your experiences and what you do. So
Okay.
can you tell our listeners a little bit more about yourself?
Well, yeah, I've been doing this quite some time. I actually recorded my first EVPs in the late 70s. I got into this. Some friends from Albuquerque that I knew were staying with me one summer, and they told me about this thing you got to try. You got to go out to a cemetery or somewhere like that, and take a tape recorder and leave it, and then come back and listen to the tape, and you'll hear voices. And that's actually the first time I ever officially got into doing this kind of thing. And sure enough, we got it. We got voices, we got noises, we got all kinds of things, and I was hooked from there on.
So, was your first paranormal experience in the 70s, or was that much earlier in your life?
Yeah, actually, that was much earlier. When I was a child, I was an Army brat, and when I was about 10 years old, we were living in Germany at the time. And the USO used to take the kids during the summer when school was out, would take us on tours to see the Rhine River and castles and things like that. And one summer they took us to Dachau concentration camp. And I don't know if you're familiar with that, but that was a extermination camp in World War II where they killed a whole bunch of people, political prisoners and Jews, and different religions and such and beliefs. And something happened there that just changed my worldview. We got off the bus. It was a nice day, probably partly cloudy, as I recall. But as soon as we crossed the thresholds of the gates of the concentration camp, it was as if somebody turned off the lights. It just felt dark and damp and ominous and just all these horrible feelings. And as a kid, I didn't really understand what was going on because we've gone to medieval castles and into dungeons, and I never felt a thing. And usually I don't. I'm not really open to this kind of stuff, so I don't feel much of anything when I'm investigating. And so none of that bothered me. But as soon as we went into this concentration camp, I just had the weirdest, creepiest feelings the whole time I was there, and I felt like we were being watched, and people were crowding around you, and there were just all these terrible things. And it got worse and worse the longer we stayed. And once we left, it was as if someone turned a light on and it was over, done. It was just like it never happened. And I never understood that. And that sparked my interest in finding what it was that I experienced that day. Was it ghosts? Was it spirits? Was it afterlife? Was it something captured at the location? I had to find out, and that's what really sparked my interest and kept me going all these years.
That's awesome. And while you guys were there, besides the darkness in the atmosphere and the ominous feeling, did you actually see anything or hear anything that was out of the norm?
I didn't see anything, but I felt like I could hear people talking or whispering. But I couldn't understand what they were saying, and it was a foreign language most of the time. Just little whispers, just little, but it sounded like a multitude of people. It wasn't just one whisper. It was as if you went in somewhere you weren't supposed to be, and just this feeling that everybody wanted you out, and that they were just crowding in closer, trying to urge you to leave. And that was it. I mean, it was more feeling than seeing or hearing or anything like that. No tactical firsthand experiences, but just this overwhelming feelings. And you ask my wife, I don't have feelings. I don't usually experience things like this. And even on investigations, like I say, I'll rarely ever experience things, although it has happened. And I find things in the data review later, but I don't experience things firsthand. I'm one of those people that's just a brick, and there's some people are very open to it and experience things. I'm the opposite of that. But what keeps me going is I'm constantly trying to figure out what it is everyone else is experiencing and why they're experiencing it, and I want to find more evidence for myself. So, but yeah, on that particular trip, it was more feeling than anything else. But that was the first time I'd experienced anything like that. And as a 10-year-old, it was just, why am I? This was a happy trip until we went there, and what changed? Why did I experience these things?
Yeah, and I have been places where there is just that darkness in the air, and it does seem darker than it should be. But as you're saying, you heard the whispering and you felt like they were encroaching upon you, and basically like you didn't belong and they wanted you to leave. We had that experience at Prairie Grove Battlefield in Prairie Grove, Arkansas, and our first night there, we didn't get permission. There was no chains or gates or anything closing it off. There were no signs saying you can only be here at this certain hour. And so we just went in and we're walking along the paths and using our lights and cameras and dowsing rods and such, and just enjoying the evening and seeing if we could pick anything up. And my daughter had actually seen, we thought it was like a park ranger or something because he was wearing khaki colored clothing, and she saw him running up the stairs of this house, which is a replica of the original. The original had been burnt down during the Civil War, but she saw this gentleman running up the stairs, and we're like, oh, maybe it was a park ranger that used to work here, because when you think of the Civil War, you think of the gray and the blue. And eventually my sister Kathy started going down this path, and she's like, oh my God, and started running back up the path, and she's like, somebody down there just said, what are you doing? And all of a sudden this police car appeared, so I think it was the officer that had said something to her, but it really freaked her out. The next day we went into the museum that they have there on the grounds, and we're walking around waiting for the lady to get to us to fill out our paperwork to be there properly and not get booted out. And we see this uniform that is khaki colored, and it's got the gold buttons and embellishments on it and whatnot, and it was actually an offshoot of the Civil War, of just another regiment from Arkansas. So that was really, really cool that she had seen that, not even knowing. But yeah, the very last night we were there, we got that experience of all of these spirits or entities, whatever you want to call them, coming in closer and closer and closer, and you could hear them whispering back and forth. You couldn't hear what they were saying, but they were obviously communicating, and we just got the overpowering feeling that we needed to get out of there immediately. And they kind of chased us out. Even up the path, they were just still following us. But it's pretty creepy when you do experience that, and it is so overpowering by the number of spirits.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something, it's hard to explain, especially for me. I mean, my wife is sensitive to this kind of stuff, and she won't go with me on investigations because she's been a geriatric nurse for a long time, and she's seen a lot of people cross over, and she's seen them after they've crossed over, and she's experienced that kind of thing, and she doesn't care to go looking for it. She says it just finds her, so she avoids it. But we went to Gettysburg a few years back, and we were at Little Round Top, which is a place where the Union had the high ground, and the Southern troops were trying to charge up this hill repeatedly to capture the hill. And I was on top of the hill looking down, and she was down below in the rocks, and she kept moving around like she was talking to somebody, and then afterwards she came up, and she usually won't talk about this kind of stuff. She says, I'm just going to tell you something, and don't make a big deal out of it. And I said, what? And she goes, the whole time I was down there in the rocks, I kept hearing somebody saying, keep your head down, keep your head down. You're going to get shot. Keep your head down. And yeah, and that kind of stuff comes around her all the time, and not me, dang it. I would love to capture something like that. And but it's just odd. And again, Gettysburg is one of the few places that I did have some weird feelings. I had on Pickett's Charge Field, a big field where thousands of men were forced to charge across an open field into the Union guns, and they knew they were going to die. And I just had this overwhelming feeling of fear the whole time I was there. It was just made me shake. And I don't feel a whole lot, but there are certain places that are just so imbued with so many emotions and trauma that's happened there that I guess you can't help but feel certain things in certain places.
Yeah, and it is, I don't know, being a Marine and learning all these military techniques and tactics, and watching videos of how they used to go to war, and they'd just be in this, large group facing each other and just firing at each other and seeing who would fall and who wouldn't. And I'm just like, who came up with this technique? Like, you would watch it and just know, like, they had to have that overwhelming feeling that they weren't going to make it through this, because what are the odds? I mean, it's insane.
Yeah, it was a very archaic way of fighting. They've been doing it for hundreds of years like that, and no one thought to change that. But
Yeah.
until more recent times. So, man, it's not such a great idea to line up across from your enemy and just shoot. So, but it's the battlefields in particular, I think, have a large amount of paranormal activity going on, just from the sheer volume of trauma and death.
Yeah, and my daughter, on I think it was the third night, had the experience of seeing a soldier run by again, and he jumped into the tree line, and at this point we were using a technique where you find some sort of sound or whatnot to play, and I found a recording of Civil War battle sounds, and you could hear the gunfire, cannon fire, people yelling at each other, people screaming, and so I had this pair of headphones. You fold them out, and they become a speaker or two speakers, and started to play that and stuck that out the window. And then not even 5 minutes later is when she saw this spirit run by and then jump into the tree line, and she really freaked out. And she's like, "Can you just take me home? Like, I just saw this, and I'm really freaked out. Can you take me home?" And I was like, "It's okay. Like, they're not going to hurt us." And she said she wasn't scared because of what she had seen. She was scared because she could feel the anxiety and panic and, the fear for his life that he was having at that point. And I could only imagine, like, what that does feel like. I feel bad for those guys, and I'm hoping it's just residual and not an intelligent spirit. Something like that, because I hate to think of someone going through something like that over and over, and it made me feel bad doing it, because I felt like maybe I caused it to happen by playing these sounds and triggering something. And, the last thing that I want to trigger is, bad or sad feelings or whatnot. So, like, we've used music and stuff like that for, like, the 1800s and whatnot on other investigations, but never again have I played such horrific sounds and got any repercussions like that. But it did make me feel guilty. I was like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah. I mean, if these were living beings, and you don't want to think that you making them relive their last great tragedy, But who knows if that's what's really happening, though. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, but I kind of remain a skeptic. I'm not. I hate that word because it always has a negative connotation to it. I'm really not a skeptic so much as an agnostic. I don't believe or disbelieve in most of the stuff I'm investigating. I mean, I think there is something going on, but I can't say for 100% sure what it is that's going on or what I think is going on. So I leave the belief until there's sufficient facts to give it a stronger hold. Ghosts in particular, I mean, it's so hard to prove exactly what that is. I mean, is it human consciousness? Is it just some kind of magnetic resonance that's left? There's so many theories and so many questions, and it seems like the more I've done this over the years, the more questions I have and the less answers. It's frustrating, but it keeps me going because things keep happening to make me want to look farther into it.
And that really is true. You think that by doing this, it is going to answer questions, but it does, in fact, present more questions to you. But it is a learning experience, and I really do enjoy it and enjoy what we do on our end and helping people not only on our side, but the other side. And it's a pretty awesome experience. And when you were talking about how you don't have feelings and you're not really gifted in that way, I kind of find that you are a gift because you're kind of like that brick in the group that keeps everyone grounded and, from going too headstrong into one direction. It kind of keeps that even kilter in there.
Yeah, I like to keep things pretty level-headed. I mean, sometimes it's hard not to get excited because something happens that it's just so out of the ordinary you can't explain it. Then your mind just races, and it's easy to jump to conclusions. But it's also good not to jump to conclusions. So I try not to, but there's been a few times. I mean, I got touched recently, which has never happened in all the time I've been doing this. I have never ever been touched, at least to my knowledge, put it that way. But this happened a few months ago, and it was undeniable. I have found no rational explanation for it other than it felt like somebody pushing me out of their way, and it was because I was blocking a door, and I have nothing. There was nothing that shows up on video. Just me saying, "Hey," and pointing out that, "Hey guys, did you get this on film?" And we checked for EVP. There's no EVP, but something clearly pushed me out of the way, and I have no explanation for that. And that's something I got excited about. It was okay. This is different. This is a different feeling.
Yeah, and a totally new experience. That's
always... I have no explanation. I mean, it felt as if I thought it was one of our team members that was behind me trying to move me so he could get through the door, and there was no one there. And that's just one of those things that leaves you just scratching your head, and then you can't sleep all night because you're sitting there thinking about it. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it does keep you up. Did you have any, after the immediate touch or push or whatever that you felt, did you have tingling or a weird sensation in that area afterwards?
No, that was the odd thing about it. I mean, it felt 100% like a human touch. It was solid. It moved me. I mean, it forced me basically to get out of the way, and I just knew somebody was coming through, one of our team members, and it felt like anybody. They just put your hand on your back and just kind of move you, nudge you out of the way, but it was fairly forceful.
That's awesome.
But there was no coldness, there was no tingling, no numbness, and anything like that. And I checked for anything that I could have bumped into. I was stationary at the time, and fortunately the video shows me not moving, so it was clearly I didn't bump into anything. I could see that much. But you can't see what happened exactly other than me moving and then freaking out a little bit.
Yeah, they could actually see the nudge and see your reaction to it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's awesome that you guys had that recorded.
Yeah, and most of the people I work with know that those things don't happen. So when I say something, they all look, and then it's like, oh, something's up, because nothing happens like that around me, and I'm just usually standing there documenting. I do a lot of filming and don't make any noise, and that was, I'm like a cameraman in the background most of the time, and that one stirred me up and got everybody's attention. But,
well, that's awesome. I'm so glad you did, finally have an experience like that, because, I know a lot of people that are like, I've never really seen anything or really experienced anything, and I wish I could. I'm like, just keep an open mind. Eventually it will happen, and I've had people get back to me and like, oh, I finally saw my first apparition and this and this and that and that, but it is awesome when you do get that confirmation, if you'd like to call it that. But Kit Kat here in the chat room was asking, does Rich find that new devices need to be calibrated over time with a singular user to provide the best results?
That depends on the device. Some devices can't be calibrated. They're pretty much, you buy them and that's what you get. Better devices can be calibrated. I know Mel meters can be calibrated. Certain EMF meters can be calibrated, but really most of the EMF meters are such a wide band that we don't know what we're calibrating for. Most indications are that EMFs of interest in the field are in the extreme low bands, very low frequency EMF. So generally, as long as you got something like the millimeter, which goes way low, most of the meters out there that go from, say, 1,000 hertz and below, are going to be useful in the field, especially very low ones. So if you can get down into the 10 hertz range or the 100 hertz range, those are very good, very interesting devices to use, because it seems like most of the data I've come across of interest is in the very low frequency ranges. Something like the K2, unfortunately, is such a high. I mean, it's a wide spectrum. It picks up gigahertz, so it'll pick up cell phones, it'll pick up microwaves, it'll pick up TV transmission, and picks up so much high frequency stuff that most of that, even if there is paranormal activity in the high frequency ranges, it's so cluttered with all of the contamination from man-made frequencies, it's going to be almost impossible to filter out. So back to the question, I get kind of off on a tangent here. Back to the question, if they can be calibrated, of course, yeah, it's great, because in science, one of the reasons they don't pay much attention to what we do is that most of the gear we use can't be calibrated or is not calibrated. It has no way of repeating standard results. You can't expect the same results every time because the equipment's flawed. So if you have a piece that can be calibrated, by all means do it. Once a month, once a week. It depends on how much you use it and what kind of device it is. But something like a millimeter, I imagine if that was calibrated once in a year or once every 6 months, that would probably be good for that type of device.
Yeah, it's funny. We used the K2 on our last investigation. We were able to go to Silverton, to the Grand Imperial, and there was a wedding party, so we were centrally located in the basement, which was where the original bar and theater were, and they had a coal chute and whatnot. But I'm using this K2 meter, and we've learned in the past that cell phones and different devices like that will make it peg, so we try not to carry them. But having nothing like that on my body, the K2 meter was just all the way up to red the whole time, and I'd pass it off to different members of the team, and it'd go back down to a green or nothing at all, and hand it back to me, and it's totally pegged out at red. And I'm like, does this mean that something is right here next to me or kind of attached to me, or perhaps I just have like a higher vibration or energy coming off of me? It was really weird because I've never had that happen before. But they can be wonky when it comes to that. Like, we use it to check, hot spots as far as wires and stuff like that, and to communicate, if you're this or if this is who we're talking to, can you take it up to red, and have it do things like that. But yeah, that was pretty interesting. And the mel meter, I'm still learning about. I haven't got it mastered, and there's so many different buttons on it and so many things you can do. I think I need to watch a few YouTube videos to figure that one out, because I got it used from someone as well as a paranormal puck and voice recorder and speaker and a few other things that came with that for only $200. Like, I couldn't pass it up, but nice. It didn't come with instructions, so I'm kind of lost on that front. But yeah, the different.
Yeah, actually, I think you can get the manual from the digital dowsing website, I believe. Oh no, that's never mind. That's what's his name? But anyway, Gary Galka has a website from where he manufactures the meters, and I can't remember the name of the site. But he used to have the manuals posted on there, and you could download them. Dang. Probably have to Google millimeter, and it'll probably come up. Anyway, but interesting enough, you're talking about YouTube. I did put out a YouTube video a long time ago, about 4 or 5 years ago, I guess. Excuse me. And I went through a bunch of EMF meters and tested them and show their frequency responses and give useful information for people who want to know more about their equipment. And that's the name of the video, is Know Your EMF Meters. And then I explain them all and show them all and how they function, and show things that can cause false triggers in them. And it's a useful video. I mean, it's not cinematic gold or anything, but it's well worth watching if you want to learn more about the type of equipment, and it will help you pick out a meter that might be more appropriate for what you want to do.
Yeah, we do have a couple boxes full of paranormal gear, and like you were talking about the EMF detectors, we have one that's an antenna, and you can select to just beep, or it can play like a little song, depending on how long it's in contact with it. And we had one of those behind the curtains of the stage, and nobody was back there, and it was pretty quiet until all of a sudden something started messing with it. And then we have the Periscope 360. Have you messed with those at all?
No, but I'm familiar with them.
Yeah,
I haven't played with one myself. It's a static detector.
Yeah, it was pretty interesting. And like you said, you can get false positives on there. Like if somebody's walking by and has static electricity on them or whatnot, it can cause it to go off. But if there's nothing around it and you're keeping your distance, we find more viability in that. Kat's asking another question. If devices are uncalibratable and are not suitable for FPR scientific study purposes, then how do you move the medium forward in order to gain a scientific edge to your research?
That's a $1 million question right there.
Right.
The problem is that there's nobody really making scientific quality equipment for the field. There was actually a fellow a while back who he worked with a missile defense company, and this guy was a genius. And he started building a meter, and I was fortunate enough to get a hold of one. It's called the DMX meter. And he basically took all the things that people were talking about in the paranormal scientific forums, basically a Christmas list of items they'd like to see put out, and he came up with a tri-field EMF meter that broke out the frequencies of the EMF that's detected into 3 frequencies. It isolates AC, from AC electricity. It isolates low frequency or very low frequency and extra low frequency EMFs, and it data logs them. And it also measures temperature and humidity, and has a voice recorder on it as well, and timestamps everything. So you can take all this information, put it into a spreadsheet program that was included with the meter, and when you're going back through your data, you can see if you have, say, a suspected EVP and an EMF spike and a temperature change all at the same timestamp, and makes much more I guess the best word I guess is more reliable data. There's a higher likelihood of that you have something with something like this that you can show and replicate. Unfortunately, though, he had to stop making those because the people he worked for told him, if you're going to continue to do that, it's a breach of contract and you can't work here anymore. And of course, he was making much more doing that, so he went back to his missile defense job. Mm-hmm. But yeah, there's literally no hardcore scientific equipment made for paranormal investigators because no one takes it seriously. Basically, we're a joke to most scientists, although there are scientific people and people in science who have the same questions we do. They don't discuss them with their other science friends because they would look silly. But until someone comes out and puts the same level of gear out that we can use, then it's going to be hard to come up with anything to advance these studies. Now, there are people, and even myself has done it, we've used scientific equipment designed for colleges. In particular, I use data logging systems, which data logs everything from different types of light spectrums to temperature spectrums to different EMF spectrums, and data logs all that. And that's a step closer. But these again aren't the quality that what scientists would use because those are much more expensive things, and really it would be cost prohibitive even if someone did come out with a multispectral analyzer that could find a phantom. Basically a device like that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars, and no one could afford it.
Yeah, the Paranormal Puck 2 that we have, I like it because, like you were saying, it does show the humidity, the static electricity, the gravitational. There's so many different fields that it does cover, and then you also get the words that come along with it. But being able to have these readings going on throughout the thing and being able to see the different fluctuations during the investigation, it's pretty interesting, and you can collect more data that way. So I really enjoy it, and it's kind of funny, when we did do our World's Largest Ghost Hunt, at first we did our investigation on our own, so we didn't have any outside inhibitors or distractions and sounds, and then we brought in people to join us afterwards, and I was trying to let everyone use the Paranormal Puck, but then I discovered that it doesn't work with Androids, it only works with iPhones. So that was interesting, and it is a learning experience throughout the time that you do it, and it kind of snags you and keeps you coming back. It's somewhat of an addiction. But Kat was saying, again, with what you mentioned as the biggest question for the research, when you create a paranormal device for studies, what are your goals when working on new hardware? And she also asked, do you take ideas for equipment as well?
Yes and yes. I do take ideas. Unfortunately, the hardest part for me these days is finding the time to actually work on those kind of things. The biggest question, or the biggest problem with developing equipment for scientific study or even basic study of the paranormal is we have to know what we're looking for. You have to decide what it is you want to find. What do you want to be able to collect data on? So you have to pick an area. Is it going to be light spectra? Do we want to focus on a UV spectrum of a certain wavelength? Do we want to work within a certain frequency of sound? That you have to decide what you're looking for before you can even begin to make a piece of equipment. A lot of people throw equipment out there that's just designed to pick up anything, and it's not helpful if you don't know what it is you're picking up. That's one of my biggest problems with stuff in the field, is that you really have to know, A, what equipment you're using and what it does and what will falsely trigger it, and B, what it is you're looking for. Is this piece of equipment even going to find what it is you want to find? So if you say you have a hypothesis that a spirit is magnetic energy, well then concentrate on magnetics. Find everything you can about that, and focus your equipment as such. If you think a spirit is something working in ultrasound or very low frequency EMF, find and calibrate equipment that's going to find that particular thing. But the problem is we don't know. I mean, there's no definitive answers on what a spirit may be. We don't know if it's a mentally perceived phenomenon. There are obviously physical manifestations, but they're never necessarily the same. There were similar ones. People report cold spots and things that are anecdotally the same or similar to other reports, but then a lot of that, I think, is kind of like folktale. I mean, people hear these things and they see this stuff on TV, and they're all kind of the same. They're reporting the same thing. There's an orb. There's a cold spot. There's a slamming door. I mean, it's a repetition of these events, and that may or may not be what's actually happening in the paranormal world. So I think the best thing people can do is try to look outside of what has already been explored, because so far in all these hundreds of years of people exploring and hunting for ghosts and using all kinds of different equipment and such, they haven't captured one. They haven't found anything that's 100% definitive. So I'm thinking we're looking in the wrong areas. I think we haven't really scratched the surface on where we need to be looking. And so that's one of the things I'm trying to work on, and when I get time to do it, is to look in areas that aren't being looked in. The EMF, unfortunately, we so pollute our planet with EMF, man-made EMF, that it's almost impossible to look in the EMF field, because we're basically swimming in EMFs 24/7. We're never out of them, and isolating frequencies of EMS is tough. It's hard. And if there is a paranormal signature in a certain range of EMF, we may never find it for all the other stuff that's in that same range. So it's kind of like trying to find a light bulb in the daylight. It's hard to look in those areas. So I think we need to concentrate in areas that nobody has looked before. And where are those? I mean, that's the hard part. What hasn't been done? And what could be viable? It's a matter of really just trying everything at this point and seeing if there's somewhere to go. Now, strangely enough, one thing I'm actually kind of working on now, I got interested a while back in brainwaves, and wanted to start testing people in the field with experiments of people trying to make contact in the field and study their brainwave patterns. I've don't have anything that's presentable, but I have some suspicions that this is more a phenomenon of people than it is of places. Now, that's not necessarily 100% true, but I think different people are, this is pretty well known, I think, that most people are, there are certain people that are more susceptible to this type of phenomenon than other people. Like me, for example, I've very rarely ever experienced anything. But I've been with people that I've worked with over a long period of time that have reliably experienced things and caused others around them to experience things. So I don't know. Again, I'm not going to say if ghosts are attracted to them or if it's something about them that's causing this experience or what it is. But in that vein, we started doing some experiments with a ghost box. Now, I've never been a big ghost box fan, although I've heard some and even found some pretty compelling responses. But again, there's no way to tell 100% for sure what it is. But we've started doing this thing, and my friend Dennis, my fellow parageezer, came up with this one day. We were at his house in Kansas. Is an old mortuary or a mortician's house, an old Victorian house. It's a gorgeous place. And the mortician used to have viewings there, so they have all of these different rooms set up where they have the viewings of the bodies, and it's just a cool little house and a great vibe. But we started doing ghost box sessions in there, and he told me about this thing that he'd worked on years ago and kind of just forgot about it. It's almost like the Ganzfeld experiment. Are you familiar with that? It's basically a simple. Yeah, it's basically a sensory deprivation type of experiment where you cover the whoever the key members that's going to be the subject of the experiment. You cover their eyes and their ears, and so that they can't see or hear anything, you pipe in white noise, so that's all they can hear is white noise, and then you record their experiences, and they're supposed to verbalize anything that they feel or see or touch or hear or whatever, and. But along that lines, we started doing this. He told me about this thing he tried with the ghost box, in which you run the ghost box with headphones on with a single person, and other people in the circle can ask the questions like you normally would with a ghost box session. But he can't hear any of the questions. The person with the headphones on only hears the box, and he's supposed to blurt out anything he hears when he hears it, and not try to interpret it. Just blurt it out. Don't think about it. Don't try to analyze what they're saying or whatever. Just blurt out what you hear. And we've done this with several different people, and at that house in particular, and only 2 of them got responses that were amazing. I mean, the first ones, most of the people would get maybe a one word here and there. They would blurt out a one word, and it usually didn't have anything to do with what was being asked. It was just a word. And we did a couple of people, and Dennis in particular, my other geezer, he would start saying sentences and stories and just ramble on. Oh, wow. I've never heard anything like this out of a ghost box session, and he was to my mind, he was channeling what he was hearing. I mean, he switched off and something was coming through, and it would change. There would be sound like different people. There would be different storylines. Oh, it was amazing. And this has taken me deeper into the realm that maybe it's the person more than it is the location that's haunted. Maybe something's going on with a particular individual that can interact or react or somehow experience whatever this paranormal thing is. And we should study that more. But so we're developing some more equipment in that line so that will monitor what's being heard, so that people outside can hear clearly or at least one person can clearly hear what's being played in the earphones and record all of that. I mean, we record the sessions right now, but we don't hear very well what's being heard through the headphones. And I think there's something interesting going on there. It's not the ghost box so much, but I'm interested in recording the people and their responses, and I also want to add into that and start measuring their brain waves and see where we go from there. But this is a fascinating area. I think something that's going to come to light is the ability of people to connect with the paranormal, and I think we're going to find out more there than we're going to find out chasing shadows and EMS.
Definitely. Tripp was saying, some say older equipment, i.e. reel-to-reel and film camera, works better than digital. What are your thoughts on that? And before we get to that, I just wanted to say, perhaps you could get like a tiny mic or something and implant it on the inside of the earmuffs or whatever, the headphones that you're using on the person, and record perhaps what they're hearing and see if that is audio or it is within the mind of the person, like some sort of telepathic message.
Yeah, exactly. And we have done a few of those like that, but they were inconclusive and not good quality. So what we're working on now is actual splitting systems that will send both the audio signal from the box to a different recorder and then record him as well, or record the user as well, so that we can have definitively exactly what's coming out of the ghost box. And then we want to also run sensors in the headset and see if it picks up anything that's he may be hearing that's not coming out of the ghost box.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a good idea. We were already looking in that area. So.
Nice. Okay,
I'm sorry. What was the other question?
And then going back to Tripp's question, some say that older equipment, i.e., reel-to-reel and film cameras, work better than digital. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, analog versus digital. There's several camps of thought in that, or two in particular. People are usually pro one or pro the other. It's kind of like when digital audio came out and CDs versus LPs. There's the purists that say analog is more accurate. However, digital technically can be more accurate, although it may not be as faithful. It's hard to explain. A lot of what we hear, see, and all of our senses are colored by perception. So somebody who's used to using older equipment and it works well for them, by all means, yeah. I mean, I used a regular old cassette recorder for years and years and years and years and years because I got results off of that. I used an old camcorder, which I seemed to get way more EVPs on than anything else that I ever used. I used it till it died because I got the best EVPs off of that thing. And it was an old, it was digital, but it wasn't one of the newer ones. But anyway, yeah, so digital has the potential to capture more data points, but the reassembly of those data points can be flawed. If compression is used in audio, it changes the initial waveform of the sound. So it's not 100% true to the original sound. So there, I'm for the possibility of digital, and I certainly use digital more now just because there's more of it available. But I have used analog devices for a long time, and they all worked amazingly well. I don't think it depends so much on the equipment as, again, maybe the user. Another thing we used to experiment with was when doing EVP sessions, we'd set recorders with certain people, and we would get voices on certain recorders that were by these certain people more than we would other recorders by other people, and sometimes even different voices. So I think there's a human influence in this. I don't know what it is, but I don't think the equipment matters as much as the person using it.
Yeah. Well, I kind of find that with the digital, like they've fixed it to a certain point where you do get rid of the static noise and all these other noises, and it's there's more clarity, and you kind of miss out on a lot of the lower frequency things that are being said or recorded or whatnot. The tape seems to record more than the digital does, and as well as with the cameras, I have a couple high 8 with the night vision that I use for my O'Brien video and photography, and they tend to pick up more than the newer digital cameras. Like if I'm taking pictures or filming the moon, I can see every, crater and crevice and everything. But when it comes to, ectoplasm or mists or whatever that you're trying to pick up, it seems like the older recording devices, as far as the high 8 and other cameras, tend to pick up more than the digital, because it is trying to clean it up so much that you're kind of missing out on what you could before. And like you said, perhaps it is with the person, like if they do have certain gifts and the spirit knows to talk to this person instead of trying to talk to this one, they could get more things coming through. But it's kind of an investigatory thing where you have to try it time and time again and see what results you get. But that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I think the digital world obviously is what we live in now, and we're going to all be forced to live in it. I mean, there's less and less analog devices, and the ones that are around are fading fast and failing. But the digital has a lot more potential, but unfortunately, it's also a lot more manipulated. I mean, computers and CMOS and those type of devices all affect the digital signal and what's actually happening at the point of recording. So there's going to be changes that we never even perceive that goes on that we can't control. Although digital does give you the ability, like you say, to clean up things and so on, because you have much more control over the actual file and the data from there, as much as the software will allow you to. But there's things that are going to be happening in the digital world that we can't control and we won't have access to fixing. And that's, I think, the difference that people perceive between digital sound and analog sound, digital video and analog video. I think the analog devices were intended to capture whatever they could in any way they could. I mean, basically it was magnetic storage for the most point, and it worked well. It worked with what we were used to hearing and how we heard and how we perceived. And the digital world goes way beyond what the human body is capable of. And I think it introduces artifacts and things that are foreign to us, and that's why some people don't like digital recordings, because they sound funny to them. I think it's because they're able to hear the changes from natural perceived hearing to what the digital is reproducing.
Yeah, it's so interesting. Robin in the chat room is asking, Rich, what do you think about the Ovilus? I don't even know where they're at now with that. Are they 9 or are they above that? I mean, they
10.
have so many coming out.
I think it's 10 now.
10?
Yeah, I think it's 10 now. I reserve my opinion on that. I don't really have an opinion one way or the other. Again, I don't say something is or it isn't until I've been able to tear it apart and look at it. Unfortunately, I've never had one that I can tear apart and look at, so I'm not going to say that it doesn't work. I do know certain things about it or at least think I know certain things about it that may or may not hinder its performance. But it's certainly like anything else. I think it's got a lot of potential. I think there's something that may be useful there. I can't say 100% that it's right on, that it's going to give you 100% results every time. The ones have experimented with and played with, they seem random. They don't really reproduce at a controlled rate, something that could be measured. Some things are just too random. Some of the responses and that kind of thing. I think it will take maybe new generations of it. One of the biggest problems is Bill Chappell doesn't really explain what kind of energy sets those things off and determines what word comes through. So, I mean, this is a machine. It's not something that a spirit is using to write a sentence with. It's something that has a database in it. It has sensors of some sort, which I'm assuming are probably EMF related, and it has computers that and algorithms that interpret what is happening in the machine. So it's hard to say on that. I'm really on the fence. I can't go one way or the other until I could rip one apart and see what's in there. But I mean, the idea of, especially if we're talking about something that was a living being in the 1800s and giving him a computer, do you think he's not going to know how to use it? I mean, I think something like that may be useful at some point, but I usually shy away from them until I know what they do 100%. I don't know. That's about all I got on that. I just think there's too much manipulation, again, from the digital world, from computers, from a database, from a software program, all of those kind of things. There's all potentials for flaws. That's where I'm at on that.
Kit Kat was asking, have you tried to create the desired readings rather than record them?
What do you mean?
I don't know. Have you tried to create, do different things to manipulate the atmosphere to get certain readings, or you just record what is happening?
I think that, yeah. I don't think, if what you're saying is like using devices that would stimulate the environment, like a Tesla coil or that kind of thing, I'm actually all about the Tesla coil. I would love to fire up a giant Tesla coil somewhere,
Me
but it's
too.
dangerous. But,
I want one of those.
But I have to say, in my view, to study a phenomenon, I think you want to interact as little as possible with it. This is my view. This is coming from the brick. So I'm not communicating with anything. I'm just trying to record what's going on. And for me, it works best if I don't interact. I mean, if I make myself as scarce in the scene as possible. I mean, sometimes just leave equipment and then come back later and pick it up. Now, other people have much better success interacting because they can experience this kind of thing. And in that case, I think maybe it's a good idea to, say, use EMF pumps or, Tesla coils or something to energize the environment. But again, we don't know exactly what it is we're trying to find. So does that do any good? Are we just doing that, or are we just zapping ourselves? I mean, I don't know how useful those are. Personally, I would rather observe it without interacting than to try to manufacture something to happen.
Yeah, I agree. Well, on that note, we have to go to our first break, so you guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after these messages.
The first annual Caribou Paracon is happening September 28th to 30th in the 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Brought to you by the Canadian Society of Questers and Spaced Out Radio. Come listen to our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Elizabeth Anglin, Paisley Town, Mike Moran, Eric Cooper, and more. It's a 3-day supernatural adventure at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Tickets for the weekend are $150 Canadian. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
A timepiece is a reflection of who you are, and what better way to show off the real you than with an Escape watch? Escape is a lifestyle brand accessorizing your days and nights. Choose to escape and create the life of discovery that you deserve. Dream, play, unite with your own personalized Escape watch. Head to escapewatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7, with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
The Call of the Wild is in Vancouver. The Moose Vancouver is one of the hottest bars and restaurants in the city. Open until 2 a.m. nightly, the Moose will rock you like a hurricane all night long. Great food with everything on the menu at $6.95 near the corner of Nelson and Granville. Get your horns up and come rock with us. The Moose Vancouver, the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You know, it's hard being the bad man of ufology, but that's just the way that I like it. This is Chris George Zuger, and I'll be hanging out with Dave Scott and SOR scientist Chris Cogswell for Reality Paranormal, the second Wednesday of every month. And our job is to break it down and come to conclusions as to what is really going on in the supernatural world. I'd love for you to join us and bring your questions for us to investigate right here on Spaced Out Radio.
There's news and there's the encounter. This is Spaced Out Radio News Director Everett Thiemer inviting you to check out The Encounter. Our half-hour news segment every Monday through Friday night is different compared to what you're used to. Our goal is to bring you the weird, strange, and interesting stories the mainstream tends to leave out, and stories that will make you scratch your head in disbelief. The Encounter can also be found at spacedoutradio.com and on our Facebook page, SOR The Encounter. Come give us a read.
Do you want to know what's really going on in your world? Do you have questions about who you can trust in the mainstream media? Then look no further than the Rebel Planet. Come get the straight answers right here at spacedoutradio.com. Join me, Jamie Sexton, creator of Rebel Planet News, as I fill you in on the stories behind the stories. All you truth seekers, be sure to tune in to Rebel Planet on spacedoutradio.com the third Thursday of every month.
Hi there, this is Dave Scott from Spaced Out Radio, and I want you to come on a nightly journey. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, every Monday through Friday, you can come hang out with me and the other space travelers. We have it all from Carl the Alien bouncing on by to those misfit gnomes causing havoc. It's 3 hours of fun and entertainment on those topics the mainstream really doesn't want to touch. Come get all paranormal with us at spacedoutradio.com, and together, my friends, along with our resident guitar god Bumblefoot, we own the night.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
Tonight's show and topic of discussion do not necessarily reflect the opinion of Spaced Out Radio, SOR Media, or its hosts. Listener discretion is advised. Here comes the second hour of Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa Nicole Thomas. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio. And you can follow Tessa on Twitter at TessaTNT. Now, back to the show.
Hey guys, welcome back and thanks so much for listening tonight. We are with Rich Horn from Colorado Paratech. Hey Rich, welcome back. So great to have you.
Thanks, Tessa.
Alright, so we left off talking about equipment, which I know there's a lot of other stuff out there. As far as equipment, the range is so wide as far as like apps and different equipment, and people tend to say, well, these apps are just for entertainment purposes only, but when you get a lot of these different equipments, it does say the same thing, for entertainment purposes only.
I think that's a lot to just protect the maker, and so someone doesn't come up and say, hey, you told me this would help me contact my dead brother, and it didn't. You know what I mean? And just like talking about the obvious before, I want to stress that these are just my opinions, and I don't really say anything does or doesn't work because I don't know. I'm not the authority on this. So something may be working. If you're using a device and you believe you're getting valid data and responses and it's working for you, by all means keep using it, because who knows where the breakthroughs are going to come from. I think that we all need to be doing as much as we can in every aspect of the field and the technology, and use everything you can and find something that works for you. And you may be the one that comes up with a definitive, yes, there's life after death. And how great would that be? So I don't poo-poo on any equipment, although there's some I shy away from personally just because I'm not satisfied I know how it works and what it is it's detecting. So the phone apps, the same kind of deal. I mean, there was 2 camps on that when phone apps came out. Oh, they're all great. They work great. And the other camp is, oh no, they're trash because they're flawed. They're on a phone, so the phone is interfering with the software. Who knows? I mean, it may be working, it may be not working. Phone apps in particular, I don't use them mainly because of the Wi-Fi element of the phone. It tends to interfere with a lot of things, but that's just from my own experience and from the type of things I'm usually trying to monitor. So I don't use any phones when I'm doing detective work. But, if they're working for you, I know some people swear by some of these apps and say they're great. So they may be. I just haven't really explored them myself.
Yeah, we've had success with the Ghost Radar Legacy, and we were at the Durango and Silverton Narrow Gauge Railroad, and we were trying to communicate with a ghost named Emmy, and the curator thought it was the older female ghost that he had come to, see and kind of communicate with. And we went in there with this app and left it in the car and went to grab some more equipment. And while it was in the train car, it came through with the words, and it started with Kate Johnson, Walter Intention Death, Sharp Tool, so on and so forth. And she actually told us, the whole story of her demise. Her fiance had snuck her onto the train car. They were going to go elope. She was actually a working girl, or a soiled dove back in the day. And they fell in love and were going to elope, get married. But being that she was a working girl, the brakeman had been with her as well. He found them together. They got in a fight, and the brakeman ended up stabbing the firefighter to death. And,
Wow.
She felt guilty as if, had she not been there, this would have never happened. And she tried to move on with her life. She moved out to California and ended up taking her own life because of this. And so she was stuck on the immigrant car for a while. And doing research, we found that she had been raised Catholic, and due to her beliefs, that's why she was there. And a Catholic school class of all things came in and said a prayer of release from purgatory, which some people have said that doesn't exist, but there's so many new things that are being added all the time. I don't doubt it. And she was gone for about 3 months, but then she did come back because there is a ghost there named Emmy, but she's a little girl ghost, and the brakeman is there as well, but Kate protects Emmy from him. The rest of the ghosts that are there are, cool, not of any dark, intent, but this certain one is quite mean to them and does say not so nice things. When we were trying to communicate with Emmy while Kate was gone, trying to go the next step and release her as well if she wanted to, he would come in and say all kinds of vulgar cuss words and stuff like that, and she would go away, and then he was left there for a little bit, and then he would go away as well because his mission was accomplished. But we have had success with it, but it is kind of hit or miss, just as well as other equipment. It's hit or miss, and you get what you get, and sometimes it is definitive and basically laying out the story, and other times it's just different random words, and it could be the entity or whatever trying to figure it out, or it could be, faulty equipment.
Yeah, it's hard to say. One thing I was kind of discussing before that I have found, though, that at least in my experience, is that when you use a certain piece of equipment over and over and over again, it seems to work better.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why that is. I think it's because you could become a little more attuned to that particular piece of equipment, and maybe vice versa. So, like I said, I used to get with this one old camcorder that I got the best EVPs that I've ever gotten, and brought a new camcorder and got nothing. So, I think that has something to do with it. I think if you use a piece of equipment long enough and really get to know it and get familiar and comfortable with it, that will somehow help the interaction or help you respond with the equipment. It's hard to explain what I'm trying to say, but it's like you become one with your equipment. I mean, it's something of reoccurring use that seems to be something about that helps increase the likelihood of collecting information.
Yeah. Kat was reiterating on her question before, and she said, basically, you have a device that can create the paranormal readings you're used to, basically create the paranormal experience first rather than record what's there. Perhaps that is the first step before investigations. I don't know.
I don't understand what you're asking there, Kat. I think, do you mean if you're monitoring the same kind of things, like a setup before the investigation to get baseline readings on devices, if that's what you're saying? I said, yeah, definitely get baselines before you do an investigation, because you want to know how the equipment's going to respond, and look for changes in the responses. If that's what you mean, yeah, by all means do that.
Yeah, it's a bit perplexing to me too. I'm like, what exactly is she trying to say? Yeah, I don't know. I could speculate on it, but I think I might be wrong.
Yeah.
And other people are talking about Tesla coil. Where do I get one? It'd be cool if they could create a smaller version of the Tesla coil to see how exactly that would work in the field. They do have things that do amp up the energy that might come from that basic equipment or understanding. Unfortunately, I don't have one of those. I have a white noise generator, which I can't hear, but supposedly they can hear on the other side or use or whatnot, and a digital dowser, which my uncle came through on, but as far as going on other investigations, it hasn't really worked too well for me. But I do douse with regular dowsing rods and have had success with that. Have you used a digital dowser or have any knowledge of that?
I haven't used a digital one. I haven't used a digital dowser at all. One thing about the Tesla coils, they do have small 9-volt powered ones now that you can get. I've seen them in some of the paranormal stores.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, they're real small, and they put off a pretty good voltage. You don't want to touch it when it's running. But, yeah, they are available, and they're small, and they're pretty cheap, too. But no, back to dowsing rods. I've played with dowsing rods, and again, it's kind of like, might as well hang it on a fence post because that's all it's going to do when I'm holding it.
Yeah.
But again, I think those have a lot more to do with the people, because my grandpa used to do dowsing to find water for people. He would find water for farmers who wanted to build wells, and he was spot on. He could find water no matter what. If it was there, he would find it. And I do know of another fellow in Canyon City named Tom who actually has been used by the correctional system down there to find unmarked prisoners' graves and other unmarked graves in different cemeteries around the Canyon City area. And apparently he's very good at that. He can find a body under the ground with dowsing rods.
That's awesome.
But,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, they just don't even move. Even if the wind's blowing, they wouldn't move in my hands. So.
My first experience with those was about, with the copper digital dowsers was about 5 or 6 years ago. Before that, my granny, when I was a kid, showed us how to douse for water with, a wooden forked stick. And, so that was my first experience as a kid, but as an adult, I went to Vegas and went on this ghost hunt, which was, I think it was like $45 or whatever, but I was like, I don't care, I want to go, I want to check this out. And they were selling dowsing rods, but letting you use them beforehand to see if they'd work with you or not. And, mine were swinging around in circles, and then you could tell it to clear, which then it would open up and you can ask yes or no questions. And through using it repeatedly, I've learned that you can get like alphabetical questions, like what's your name, and you can click them together or get them to click it together until you get a name. And it is time consuming. You can also get an age and ask different yes or no questions, and locations like your friend or this person detecting these graves. That's just pretty awesome. And I tell people in the field all the time, like, we're all going to be ghosts someday, and nobody wants to be forgotten. And to be able to find their unmarked graves kind of gives them that peace, to be able to rest. That's pretty epic that he's able to do that.
Yeah, this guy's amazing. So when you were doing the dowsing with the wooden stick, did you have any luck with it?
Well, my granny was showing us how, but she knew where the water lines were and everything, and It's kind of,
Did it
you
work for
retain
you?
certain memories. With the wooden stick, it did do the bobber thing when you would come across a water line. And like I said, she knew where they were, so I think that I did good, but I can't remember clearly. I was only about 6 or 7 years old at this time. But then again, as an adult, getting the copper wires and using those, like, I've had a lot of success with them as far as doing locations on one of my first investigations, and the reason I came out of the paranormal closet was the Dylan Redwine case, and he was a friend of my oldest daughter's and had been sent back here for Thanksgiving to be with his dad, which he didn't want to for reasons I won't go into, but he was murdered the night that he arrived, and the dad was finally arrested. But going up and down Middle Mountain, I would use my dowsing rods and check locations, and I would do that 3 different trips and see if I got the same locations each time, which I did. So then the next step is going out and trying to find whatever it is, and I'm excited to see what we can find. It's just hard finding someone to go up with me, and I'm not going to go up into bear country and my mountain lion country all by myself, and disappear as well. So yeah, getting someone to go up with me is kind of hard, but I'm hoping this next year we'll make some progress. So far, they've only found, well, at first it was 2% of the remains, and then this last year and a half, they found the skull. So I'm hoping that we can find more, being there are critters and such up there. It can be difficult because they do carry off certain things. But as much as we can find, I'd like to do just to bring peace to not only him, but his mom,
Yeah.
But yeah, dowsing, I think, does work for some of us. And like you said, for others like yourself, it won't move no matter what you want it to do.
Yeah, I was just curious if you had luck with the wooden ones, because my grandfather started with the willow switches, and he always preferred those. He went to copper wires. He made them out of coat hangers, and would use those sometimes. But he always went back to the wood, and it seemed to work better. So, which I always thought was odd, because I figured, well, if that has something to do with your body's electricity and using you as an amplifier to find the signal, then you should use wire. But he did way better with wood than he did with wire, which is strange.
Yeah, and
But again, it was him. It was him. He was, he was the conductor.
Yeah, and that's what I've learned, through studying this stuff online and through other people and books. Like, I bought one book and it was just basically useless. I'm like, why did I pay $18 for this? But, the original, I can't say the original, but for back east in my granny, there's the willow sticks, applewood sticks. There's only certain ones that really do work for that. And, even back in, I think the 16 and 1700s, the French and other people were using dowsing rods to track down, escaped criminals or whatnot, people that they were looking for. They were able to do it. And I thought it was funny because they said even, the Germans would put like a sausage on a, spit or whatever, and it would spin around and kind of work as that. And at first I thought it was the spirit, manipulating the rods to communicate, but people are saying that it's actually your internal ticks and receiving the message, and your body like puts out the certain vibrations to get that message. So I don't know. It's still a question in my mind. How exactly do these work? And am I the trigger that's, getting these messages and putting it through the dowsing rod, or is something manipulating them?
Or the conduit. Maybe you're just a channel.
Yeah.
I'm coming to a conclusion that has a lot to do with it. I think some people are just conduits, and if you think about it, if spirits can see you, or can somehow know somebody that they can communicate through, they would naturally be drawn to them, I would think. Whereas someone like me, I don't even show up on the radar, I'm sure. So. It's fascinating, and I'm fascinated by people who do have that ability. I mean, it's just something that I wish I had, but I don't.
And you were saying you've got 30 years of experience in the paranormal field. what was your first investigation? Did you just go out on your own to do something, or did you go out with a team? What exactly happened there?
Basically it was me and a few friends. We go out and we started with the EVP experiments. These guys, my buddies from Albuquerque, we were actually in a band together at the time. And weird story, because I wasn't actively interested in that kind of stuff at the time. And we were all living in this one house together, and we used to make jokes because one of the guy's girlfriends lived with us in the house, and they shared a room. And we used to, when we moved into this house, we used to kid, we said, Rhonda, the house is haunted, Rhonda, oh, look at it, it's haunted. And just being stupid and trying to scare her and that type of thing. Yeah. Well, from the time we moved in there, things started happening. And the first night we were there, we got up in the morning and all the shades on every window was down. They were all on the floor. It was like somebody had ripped all the shades down. And later on, some weeks later, we had a lamp that just exploded in the room when everybody's sitting there. Used to see shadows, used to hear noises and stuff, but we always usually attributed it to one of the other guys trying to prank us, that was so prevalent. But one night I was there by myself, and I kept seeing a shadow run behind the TV, and there was a light behind me, and I just knew somebody was hiding behind the couch trying to prank me. And I jumped over that couch to get him, and there's nobody there, and that gave me the willies. And just from the whole time we lived there till the time we moved out, things like that happened. Lights would mysteriously fall out of the ceiling, just all kinds of oddball things. And that's about the same time we started doing these EVP experiments, and we would go out to cemeteries and that type of thing, and just leave the recorders and come back and pick them up. So we weren't actively investigating like people. And in those days, nobody talked about this kind of stuff. There was one or two shows on TV about the unexplained and that kind of thing, but it was pretty much a closet deal. I mean, if you said you were looking for spirits, people would lock you up. So we just did it for fun, basically. I mean, it was fascinating to me because I've always had this attraction to the unknown and death and that kind of thing, and trying to find out more about it. And read as many books as I could on it, and would watch all the shows and documentaries that were out there. And it's just something we kind of did because we didn't really know how to do investigations in those days. It was just trying whatever we could think of, or what we saw being done on the documentaries, like the tape recorders. I mean, using the limited technology we had at the time available to us. And most of all, it was a tape recorder. You could just take a cheap tape recorder out somewhere and leave it and come back, and there would be something on it. And so that was pretty much it in the early days. I didn't actively start working with teams until about the 80s, and worked with a few teams there, and it was very crude in those days. I mean, there was not much for equipment. We were very old school. I mean, we'd use things like feathers, and we used to tie magnets and feathers in a jar, sealed in there from a string hanging from the lid of the jar, and try to see if it would move and things like that. There wasn't a whole lot of equipment available.
That's super cool. That's a good idea, though.
Yeah, well, strangely enough, old school things still work. I mean, you do things like putting baby powder on the floor and looking for footprints and things like that. Sometimes that worked, and that's literally all we had was the most simple things to use, and we tried them, and some of them worked, some of them didn't. But that was early technology in those days. And then, of course, night vision filming was just ridiculous. I mean, there was nothing very good for cameras, and there was no lighting available. That's one of the reasons I started Ghost Lights, is because the lighting was horrible. You couldn't see anything when you go back to look at the video. Even the security cameras we used were pretty low budget, and they didn't really work very well. So I started exploring infrared technology and cameras in particular, and started building new and stronger lighting to increase the likelihood of actually being able to capture something.
So you got into the field of lighting because of the shoddiness of trying to get, this filming of investigations and not being able to see it. So you just
exactly.
Yeah,
one of the biggest problems we always ran into was misidentifying something in the scene. You would see a shadow go across the back wall, and it turned out to be one of the investigators, but you couldn't see it in the video because it was so grainy. So I found out early on that the more IR power you can have on a camera, the clearer the scene's going to be, regardless of the quality of the camera. So I started working on higher power technology for infrared lights, and man, it made a world of difference. And all of a sudden, we were seeing exactly what was in the scene. You could see if there was an actual unclaimed shadow, I'll call it. In other words, there wasn't a person attached to the shadow. You could just see the shadow. Mm-hmm. We saw objects move that may have moved before, but we could never tell because the film was so terrible. So yeah, that's fueled my interest in that, and I've kind of been obsessed with that ever since.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I'm still like, my mind is blown about this mason jar with the feathers and stuff in it. I was like, I've never thought of that.
It's a great trick.
Yeah.
It's so simple. I mean, and it's because it's sealed. There's no air blowing on it. There's nothing that really should cause anything in there to move. And a feather is great because if anything touches it, is susceptible to static. So if anything gets too close to it with static, it will move. But and the magnet was the other thing we tried, and the magnet moved only a handful of times. Only a couple of times I saw the magnet move. But yeah, it's just interesting low-tech things like that still work and give results, and most people don't use them anymore because they're not cool, They don't do them on TV, so.
Well, I think it would be awesome to do something like that either on, a YouTube channel or on one of these shows, because it is not used like everybody else uses the K2 and the Ovulus and the Paranormal Puck and all these other things. But nobody uses the mason jar with a feather and a magnet and, whatnot in it. I'm just like, I've never heard of this. I want to try it.
Yeah, you should. It's you never know if you're going to get results. That's why I like to say try everything. Anything you can think of, no matter how ridiculous it sounds, try it. You don't know what's going to happen, and what if it works? What if it works repeatedly? So
did you guys
another thing I was interested in was things that move, and one of the things I'm fascinated by is objects that move with no explanation. And I've captured a number of those things. And I started working before Ghost Lights blew up and became my full-time job. I started working on devices that would be tactile, something that if there is an entity moving that has sufficient power to move an object, then it should be able to touch something and make it happen. So I started working in different areas to make devices that would respond to touch, and had mixed results with that, and haven't been able to pursue it much further. I made one device a long time ago called the E-probe, which was basically I don't know how to describe it. It basically detects moving electric charges. It's not static electricity, and the only things that have moving electrical charges are living biological systems and lightning. So to detect these kind of things, well, the thing that drew me to it is the fact that all biological entities have an electric charge that moves throughout their structure. We have electricity in our bodies. Plants have electricity in their leaves. It's amazing. It's so low voltage, it's hard to measure, but it's there. And so I came up with this device that would concentrate on low voltage electricity, not to pick up lightning, although it probably would blow up if a lightning strike was close by. But it was the type of device you could touch it or get about an inch away from it and would go off just from the electricity in your body. And those are moving electrical charges. You could set it next to a lamp and nothing would happen because the charge is not moving. As long as the lamp is turned off, or if it's turned on and doesn't change in intensity, then there's no moving electric charge. It's constant. So it wouldn't set off the device. And I had limited success with this. One thing I liked about it, most people didn't like about it, is almost never went off. And most people are like, well, I want to see something that lights up. I want to feel like I'm communicating with something. Well, I wanted something that didn't light up all the time, because when it did, then it really drew my interest. And we were at a couple of different locations where this thing has gone off crazy, and there's literally no explanation for it. But we were at a place called the Peabody Mansion in Denver. Actually had filmed an episode of Ghost Adventures there, and we went up the next weekend to do our own investigation of the property. And we were on the top floor. It was 4 o'clock in the morning, dead quiet outside. And I walked into this closet, and actually one of my co-investigators said, do me a favor, go walk into that master bedroom and walk into the closet. I said, okay. So I walked in there, and the device went off for no reason. It went off, and it's never gone off almost. I mean, there's maybe a handful of times it's gone off in years that I've used it. And right after that, we captured and heard with our ears, it sounded like a child crying, and we captured it on audio. And it was an eerie experience.
Yeah, and that's awesome that you're able to capture it. Have you ever had an investigation where you were able to hear a voice with your own ear, but you did not pick it up on your equipment?
Yeah, I've had that happen a number of times.
That just
and
always makes me dumbstruck, because I'm like, how can I hear it with my ear and other people hear it too, but it wasn't picked up by this recorder? How does that happen?
Exactly. How does that happen?
It's a mystery.
Because, to hear it, generally to hear sound, there has to be air. It takes air pressure. There has to be moving air
and
to
vibration.
compress it. Yeah, and to go into the ears and to be translated by the brain back into auditory sound. So how can we hear something that is not recorded? Vibrations are going to be recorded on an audio recorder or even a video recorder. So why doesn't that pick that up? That means it has to be happening somewhere else, maybe internally, maybe in the brain, maybe somewhere in between the brain and the ear. I mean, if we're talking about something that we don't really understand where it is, how it works, or where it's at, I mean, we may be talking about frequencies that no one's looking at. So.
Yeah, I'm just sitting here. My heart's all aflutter. I want to go up and investigate with you and check out your equipment.
Yeah, anytime.
That would be awesome. I so want to go. I'm going to put that on my calendar. Guess what, Rich? I'm coming up this weekend. You got a place for me?
Right. Heck yeah, we'll go back down to the Abbey. That place is crazy.
Oh, that'd be awesome. I'd love to do that. And that's a theater, right?
No, it's a monastery. It's almost a 100-year-old monastery in Canyon City.
Oh, wow.
It was built by Benedictine monks and was operated as a boys' school and a vineyard up until the 1980s when it closed, and it remained vacant for a long time. And a corporation bought it for the vineyard because it has world-class grapes there, and they make some amazing wine. So this corporation bought it to develop the vineyards and produce wine. And they kind of leave the abbey, the monastery, and the surrounding grounds to fend for themselves. Basically, they can make money however they can make money. They don't care, but they're not interested in the upkeep on the buildings. So the ladies who run the abbey do public events there. They do weddings and so on. It's no longer a Catholic church. The Catholic Church has desanctified it, so it's just a structure now. But they do have weddings and different things there, family reunions and what have you. And we do public investigations there to raise money for them as well. And that's when I was telling you about before we started talking that we've raised over the years about $30,000 to save their roof and do upgrades on the building. But the monastery itself is gorgeous. It's an old Gothic building. It's 4 stories tall. It's huge. It looks almost like a castle. And then it has surrounding dormitories on the grounds that are very interesting. We've had some really weird things happen in those. And then there's a football field. And it was going to be, when it was originally being built, it was supposed to rival Notre Dame. And unfortunately, they had problems, because this was in the 1920s when this was built, and they had problems with the KKK, who didn't want Catholics coming into the area. So they had a long struggle, but they did get the monastery and the surrounding grounds developed somewhat, not as much as they were going to. But the monastery itself is just gorgeous and very active.
I could imagine. I'd love to see it and investigate it. And there's, you can imagine all the years of things going on there and people, trying to conquer or accept their spiritual goals. And it is a very hard thing trying to get to your spiritual path and to maintain it and to become this spiritual being, because there's so many things I feel that try to interfere with that and send you astray. And, you can just imagine the struggle of some of these monks trying to accept this life, not really accept it, but, get a hold of it, get in check with it, and just the struggle and the different spiritual variations. And, you hear about meditation and, healing can happen. All kinds of different miracles can happen with meditation. And I know monks are pretty big on that. You could imagine the energy and emotions and everything that could be recorded in those dwellings. And, even if it is residual, it'd still be epic to capture that, or to be able to experience that, and to have the, I want to say educated, but it's more, what is it called? I have a brain fart right now. Intelligent spirit that's able to communicate with you and, tell you what it needs to get that point or message across to you, or let you know who they are, or that they're still there. And I often wonder, why are spirits still here? Especially those that are in that, spiritual quest. Are they stuck because they didn't reach it? Or is this just a recording of what they were going through? What kind of experiences have you guys had there?
Well, they're very varied. There's very strong male presences there. Assumedly, some of either the monks, but more likely the fathers, the ones that were in charge there. One of the senior abbots, probably, because his room is very active, and women don't feel comfortable there. This was in an age when women and men were separated in the Catholic Church, especially in monasteries. They had a nun's house near there, and they had some German nuns that attended to the monks. They did the cooking and baked bread and that kind of thing, and would feed them, but they weren't allowed to eat with them. They had to eat on their own, stay separate from them. So they weren't allowed to interact. But there's very strong, seemingly religious entities there. But oddly enough, because this was a boys' school, and usually the ages were from about 10 to 18. But there's one place called Thorn Hall, which was an old dormitory that was abandoned and stayed abandoned for some odd years, probably 10 years or so. We repeatedly get recordings and have experiences with children there. One time we were talking about recording or hearing voices, not recording. It was one of the places where we did hear either a child, a very high-pitched female, or a child that said hello to us, and it's very clear, and then giggled. And we all heard it. There were 3 of us that entered the building at the time and heard it, and we got it on recordings as well. But so there seems to be a lot of things. We had a friend of ours from California that came out to one of our public investigations, and he left a camera running in this particular place from about 9 o'clock to about 11 o'clock, just running on its own. Nobody was in the building at the time, and we were investigating the main abbey. And when he played this back the next morning, he goes, "You guys got to check this out. What is this?" And he went back in and retrieved the camera, and nobody suspected anything. Unfortunately, he had a cheap IR light and had it pooped out on him, so he got no video at all. So, but he had a great audio. And from about 10 minutes in, you hear just kind of like squeaks and a little chirp and something. And initially we thought, well, it's probably a raccoon or something that got in there. And then they get louder, and then there's more of them. And then it becomes very distinct giggling and laughing and running, and then there's doors slamming and stuff bouncing around and laughing and yelling, and it sounds like kids at recess. And this goes on for 20 minutes, and then it just dies off.
That's awesome. And a lot of people say, when they see a child spirit or whatnot, oh, that's a demon. But I don't believe that. I believe, demons can use the form of a child to gain trust through someone, but I don't believe that every child ghost is a demon. Some of them are stuck there because they can't find their mom and dad, or they don't even realize that they're dead, and they're, trying to find their way. There's so many different variations. No story is the same, and And so it really does hurt my feelings when they're like, oh, well, I saw a child ghost, it must be a demon. I don't believe that. Maybe it's a child that's trying to reach out to someone or find its mom and dad and needs help and doesn't know, I should have gone to the light or whatever, their belief is. Some people get angry when people say that, go to the light, it's a trap, blah, blah, blah. But, I mean, you hear of it from so many different people that there is a light. But, do you find any spirits that are stuck because their life was taken so quickly, or they just didn't realize what happened to them, or that they had actually died, or are just stuck because they're attached to like a car or a sewing table or other different things that they were just like there all the time with in life or had a certain attachment to?
Yeah, I don't know that they are necessarily stuck. I think a lot of people remain because they were happy there, or that's something of interest to them. In the case of this the one place I was telling you about with the children running around, there were no children that age at that time when this was an open monastery. There were much older boys there, so there was no little kids allowed there. So there's really no reason for them to be there other than maybe they just wandered in there and that's their place now. And when this was recorded, there was no one around, so there's really no reason to try to fool somebody into thinking it was a child or children. So I don't know. I think a lot of hauntings remain because maybe that's where they're the most comfortable. Whether or not they liked it, and some people become trapped in their own lives. They don't, whether it's good or bad, that's what they know, and they're afraid to venture beyond that. So just like the way people remain in a bad relationship, maybe an abusive relationship, because they don't enjoy it, but they're afraid to leave. Afraid to venture off. This is the only thing they know, and they feel that that's their life. They have to live that way. Well, I think it may be that way afterwards as well. I think there may be people who just think this is where I belong. I'm staying here. I don't know anything else. The rest of this is a mystery to me. I'm just going to stay where I'm at. I'm safe here. I don't know. Maybe not. I know there's got to be a lot, especially in the case of battlefields and stuff, and traumatic and instant change. I think there's a lot of residual and a lot of maybe intelligent that's just there out of sheer terror. I mean, it happens so fast, and they are stuck maybe. But for the most case, most of the places I've been, I haven't really ever encountered anything negative. Everything's been I don't know, at the very worst, grumpy, But I think if these are the spirits of passed over people, I think many of them stay because that's where they want to be. And I have a little theory about buildings in particular when they're left vacant seem to attract that sort of thing, and I think that's the case at the Sheila Thorne Hall. Because it was vacant for so long. We did a investigation of a hotel in Fairplay that had been foreclosed on and was vacant for 4 years, and the new owners came in and called us up there because there was a lady who was staying there by herself in February, and she said the place was nuts. There was stuff going on all over the place. There was noises, there was stuff moving, there was banging, there was all kinds of stuff going on. And she was freaking out because she thought as people broke in, she kept calling the police. They'd come out, there's nobody there. And so we went in there, and there was a whole lot of activity there. But after she got the place opened up and it kind of filled up with people, the whole thing calmed way down. There's very little going on there now. And I think it has to do with, I think vacant buildings attract stuff because, I mean, think about it. If you're floating around out there and you say, ooh, here's a place I can hang out, you might want to do that. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, yeah, I don't think that all spirits are stuck. Like, some just want to stay, want to be here because, they built this place, or it's a place they loved, or a place that they always wanted to go to. And I don't think that all spirits are stuck in one place. Like, they can move from place to place or even follow people home or whatnot. I've experienced that. But I do think there are some that just, they don't know that they've died, or they don't, which I don't know how that could happen, like, after so many years. Although people say on the other side, time is just a different thing. It's not the same as over here. But you'd think after so many years of being dead that they'd get it. But some don't.
Maybe there is no time. Time's a human construct anyway, so maybe there's no
Right.
concept of time. And
Yeah.
maybe it's just every day is the same. It's just another day. Or maybe it's all one day.
Like Groundhog Day.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Well, Michael McNeil was saying he would like to know if, I don't know if he's talking about infrared lights or whatnot, if they are caused by the piezoelectric effect, or what causes them. Marfa? Do you know what he's
Oh, the
talking
Marfa
about?
lights?
Yeah.
Talking about the Marfa lights? That's a mystery. Nobody really knows what that's caused by. Some people think it's reflection from faraway car headlights, bouncing on the atmosphere. I don't know. I've never been there, unfortunately. I've heard about them, and I used to live in Texas, but not near there. I don't know. That there could be anything. It could be an atmospheric effect that's caused by a combination of gases and charges in the atmosphere. It's unknown. They seem to recur all the time, though, so it must be something environmental, because for something to recur like that just constantly, people can go out there on a regular basis and see these lights, and they come on like clockwork. So I'm thinking it's got to be something atmospheric rather than paranormal, but I don't know for sure. I can't really say.
Yeah. It's interesting, these things that happen. I've had experiences. As a young child, it was during a storm, and we saw a fireball that came and hit our front porch, then came up through the living room floor, and then floated over to the dining room area right by the kitchen, and stopped, and then shot down the hallway towards my brother, who was taking the clothes out of the dryer so they wouldn't wrinkle. And it popped against the back wall, which we lived in a brick house at the time, and was gone, but it seemed like it was intelligent. And some people are like, well, that's St. Elmo's fireball, or that's an electrical fireball caused by the static of the storm. But it seemed as if it was intelligent. And then at another time, I saw a fireball in my backyard, and that was about 5.5 years ago. And it was coming back down the back gate or fence at like a slow walking pace, and it was 3 or 4 feet in diameter, and it looked as if it had liquid fire flowing through it. It was red and orange and yellow, and it was going in a clockwise fashion. At first I tried to get my phone and try to manipulate it to where I could get to the camera, but it wasn't working. And then I opened the door and stepped 1 foot out, and then I was like, okay, I have 3 kids. I don't know what this thing is. I don't know what it's going to do to me. So I stepped back in and closed it and called everybody over to the door, because, I wanted somebody else to see it and didn't want to, think I'm losing my mind and going batshit crazy. And then, I had my 2 daughters and my husband at the door with me, and my 2 daughters saw the same thing. But according to my husband, he saw, he could see this sphere, and it looked like it had a glowing bat within it, flapping its wings at a very, very slow rate of speed. I attribute that to being like an alien orb or a Foo Fighter or whatever you'd like to call it, just, getting readings or taking different data. Have you guys had any experience with your teams as far as aliens or UFOs or whatnot?
No, actually, never really experienced any of that kind of stuff, although the San Luis Valley is supposedly rife with that kind of thing. But I've never been down there to... Now, personally, I've seen what I would call as UFO. I've seen a number of them. But, no, we haven't really done any research into that. I have a good friend who works for MUFON, actually. But,
nice.
No, that's not really my area, although I'd get into it if I had the chance. But, yeah, I'm more into spirits and that sort of thing and passed on. Mm-hmm. But about the lighting, and you're talking about the glowing lights or whatever. Now, the one that was in the house, did that do any damage inside the house? Did it leave any burn marks or anything like that?
No, and that's what was interesting. Okay, the front porch was concrete and, like I said, a brick house. But when it came up through the floor was wood. And so when we looked, there was no burn mark, nothing like that. It had just come through the floor very slowly and come up to, like the other one, 3 or 4 feet off the ground, moved slowly into the dining room. And at this time, the power had gone out. Me and my mom and my siblings are sitting in a circle, talking, telling stories and whatnot. And she's the one that spotted it, and she's like, "You guys be quiet." And we're like, "What's going on?" Asking questions as kids do, 1,000,001 questions. And then all of a sudden we saw it, and right at that moment it shot towards the house, hit the concrete porch with a slap or a clap, like so loud. And then it slowly came through the floor. It did not burn it. And then moved into the dining room area and then shot down the hallway through the brick wall at the end. But I think it was attracted to noise, or maybe she had known that. That's why she had covered my mouth, because at this point I was 4 or 5 years old, and it's hard to keep a kid that age quiet, especially when something like this is going on. So she's covering my mouth, and my brother was down the hallway moving things around and making noise, and it went over, to the area that went down the hallway and shot down towards him. Luckily, he had dropped and hit the floor, and then it went out the wall and it didn't come back. I've heard of the St. Elmo's fireball, and it really doesn't do anything intelligent like that. So that was a mystery to me. Like, when we first saw it, it was, how the power line is. You have the T of the pole. It was like right in the center of that. And that's what made me think it was just electrical phenomena, thinking back on it. But then it does have that intelligent movement. It's not just shooting around everywhere or doing something strange or hitting something and disappearing. It hit somewhere and then came back up and then continued to move around and disappear through the back wall. I don't know.
I think you can probably rule out anything natural, though, like seeing Elmo's fire or lightning, ball lightning, and that kind of thing, because those are extremely high voltage charges, and if they hit anything metal or anything, they'll kill a person if they touch a person. And generally, they move similar to lightning. They find a negative charge that they can attach to, and they pop. And so you don't want to be anywhere around. But that's a very rare phenomenon. Those are very rarely ever seen or happen around people. And usually if they do, somebody dies. But it probably was not that, because that would have been sufficient voltage to burn the floor as it came through. It would have, anything metal that came near it, it would have zapped instantly. So I would rule that out.
Yeah, and, I try to, think scientifically and not just automatically think this is something paranormal or this is something, along those lines.
Well, it could still be some weird atmospheric thing that happens. I mean, we don't know everything that happens on this planet, and we're still finding stuff that we don't know about. Excuse me. But something like ball plasma has been seen, which is a very rare and weird experience, but it's a natural thing. It happens in the atmosphere, and nobody can explain why or how it does. It just does. And maybe that was it. Maybe that was what you were witnessing. Who knows?
Yeah, and it was weird because when it did come through the floor, like we were each maybe a foot or 2 feet away from it, you didn't feel any heat off of it. We didn't get any electrical charge. Nobody was shocked or injured or hurt. There's no burning of the wood. It was pretty interesting. I gotta do some more homework on that now. But Tripp in the chat room was saying Mr. Horn mentioned making a piece of equipment that would respond to touch. Has he thought of trying to use something based off of the theremin musical instrument? Theremin?
Yeah, actually, there's tons of those out there now. That's what the REM pod is. REM pods use the theremin circuit, and those are out there in abundance. So I tend to work in areas where other people aren't. So I'm more interested in something that will prove a tactile touch, something that can measure pressure, maybe respond to the touch. I did an old experiment a long time ago with a child's keyboard, a little tiny piano, and it was electric. So you put a battery in it, and then you would touch the keys, and it would play the note. But I removed the keyboard from the top of it and made it just a contact switch that would run the entire length of the keyboard, and to see if it would be touched and make different musical notes. And unfortunately, that never did anything. So that's inconclusive. But I'm interested in something that can prove that an entity has the power to move an object. I've witnessed it. I've got it recorded of things being moved, but I would like to see something that could measure that and perhaps measure the pressure of that and document it, data log it, and that type of thing.
That'd be awesome. Kat was saying in the chat room, so why study the paranormal if we are all going to die anyways? What does Rich or investigators want to prove to the world?
That's a great question. That's awesome. That the whole thing for me, the entire ball of wax boils down to, do we go on after we die? I mean, what would be better to know in this lifetime that after we die, that's not the end. We keep going. I mean, there's plenty of people who believe that anyway, and religions certainly teach that. But, who knows for sure? I mean, there's one of the most a real interesting area for me is near-death experiences, and there's currently, which is really nice, there's currently medical studies being done in that area, and they're getting data from people who are monitored, who have died in controlled circumstances, not induced. They don't kill them to see what happens, like that movie Flatliners. But but these are people that have been documented in under controlled experiments, and there's one going on now that's in a second version that is measuring terminally ill people and other people who have been declared dead for a number of, some of them up to 30 minutes, and who come back and get in their descriptions. And they're describing things that can't be, not only the things they see in the, what we'll call the afterlife for now, the bright lights and similar type of things like that, but they describe things in the environment. And these experiments are set up where they position objects in different areas of a room where the person dying is, and they can't be seen from where they're at in that room. In other words, they would have to be very high, like on the ceiling, to be able to see this, what trigger object or whatever we'll call it, and in different areas, something that's outward facing in another room, that type of thing. And they've had people come back who described these items that they planted in these different areas. So that, to me, is interesting, because that means, and this is what they're actually studying. They're studying consciousness, and they're pretty well have determined that consciousness exists at least for a little time past the point of medical death. In other words, when the brain stem has stopped any activity, the cortex is dead, flat, there's nothing going on in the brain, and yet consciousness is still going on. That, to me, says there's life after death. And that's the reason I keep doing paranormal research. For me, I would love to have it settled in my own mind that, yeah, definitely, we go on, I'm happy, let's move on, let's look for something else, because what more do you need to know? How comforting is that, especially to people who are dying now and sick, and to be able to convince them, to prove to them that, don't worry about it, this isn't the end, you're going to be better off.
A little blip in the timeline. But I hate to interrupt you, but we got to go to our second break.
Okay, no problem.
You guys don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
Heading to Vancouver and looking for some great nightlife? The Moose Vancouver is the place to be. Catch a game on one of the big screens, or just come rock out to your favorite 80s and 90s hair bands. Great food starting at $6.95. The Moose Vancouver is open until 2 a.m. nightly. It's easy to find near the corner of Nelson and Granville. The Moose Vancouver is the official rocking bar of Spaced Out Radio.
Find your escape where time has no limits. It's about living today and cherishing the heritage of yesterday. A spirit of adventure for what is new, with the nostalgia of the past. Your timepiece is a reflection of who you are. Life surrounded by beauty from the world around us to the soul within. EscapeWatches.com. There is no time like the present to enjoy your escape. Use promo code SMF2017 for your 20% discount today.
Coming September 28th to the 30th, it's our first annual Caribou Paracon, put on by Spaced Out Radio and the Canadian Society of Questers. 3 days of paranormal, supernatural, and spiritual knowledge in the beautiful 108 Mile Ranch, British Columbia. Tickets are $150 Canadian for the event, being held at the Spruce Hills Resort and Spa. Come watch our featured speaker, Grant Cameron, along with Lorian Fenton, David Weatherly, Ross Allison, and more. The Caribou Paracon, celebrating everything paranormal.
Are you tired of being blocked, shadow banned, or placed in jail for simply posting your thoughts on social media? Social Media Freedom can take care of that for you. Social Media Freedom is the newest and one of the best free new apps that allows you the freedom to post what you want, when you want. It takes seconds to download from your app store. Come join the tribe at Social Media Freedom. It's time to set yourself free.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
We're bringing scientific thought to the paranormal. Hi there, this is Spaced Out Radio scientist Chris Cogswell. Join me, Chris Zuger, and Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month, where we break down the who from the woo when it comes to everything paranormal. We'll investigate and try to bring sensible answers to those straight and sometimes outlandish questions people have. Hey, not everything has an answer, but we'll do our best. Listen in to Reality Paranormal only on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com.
When it comes to the news, we look for the stories that the mainstream won't cover. Welcome to Spaced Out Radio's The Encounter. This is News Director Everett Thiemer. The Encounter is about the weird and strange stories that occur daily, and we scour the world looking to bring them to you. You can hear me with Dave Scott every Monday through Friday in our Encounter news segment. Read us online at spacedoutradio.com or check us out and give our Facebook page a like at SOR The Encounter. So come give The Encounter a read.
Are you an experiencer? Have you had run-ins with strange creatures you can't explain? ETs, Dogman, Bigfoot, werewolves? They're enough to scare the daylights out of anyone. Hi there, I'm Butch Witkowski from your 4-Cop. And on the last Monday of every month, you can listen to me and the host, Dave Scott, talk about the weird and the strange being reported on Spaced Out Radio. I'm going to bring my investigations and sources, you bring your experiences, and we'll figure out the rest together. Strange Days on Spaced Out Radio. Come tune us in at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Looking for nighttime adventure? Old school radio that delves into everything out of the norm? Then check us out at Spaced Out Radio. This is Dave Scott. Every Monday through Friday, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, we're going to take you on a wild ride ranging from conspiracies to true crime and every ghost, alien, and Sasquatch story in between. We're always live, and we're always interactive with you. So join us at spacedoutradio.com, where together, we own the night.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month, where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Tonight's show and topic of discussion do not necessarily reflect the opinion of Spaced Out Radio, SOR Media, or its hosts. Listener discretion is advised. It's hour number 3 of Spaced Out Sunday with host Tessa Nicole Thomas. Follow Tessa on Twitter at TessaTNT. Our website is spacedoutradio.com. Now back to the Rocky Mountains. Here's Tessa.
Hey guys, welcome back. So great to have you on tonight. Tonight we have Rich Horn from Colorado Paratech, and it's been an awesome evening and it's been flying by. I wish we had at least 5 hours, except for I'm sure Rich would like to go to sleep. Rich, welcome back.
Actually,
so
I don't sleep a whole lot.
Yeah, me neither.
Thanks,
It could be something to do with the paranormal field, but I don't know. So we were talking about when we die and afterlife experiences, and then you told me a story. Could you share that with our listeners?
Oh, the one about the shoe?
Yes.
Yeah, this is one thing that's really fascinating to me, and this is one of the ones from the controlled experiment they're doing. They were placing objects in a room that could not be seen from the vantage point of the person on the table, and to see if these were reported when they came back, and they got numerous people who came back and described these items that they had hidden around this operating room. But one in particular was strange. A lady said that she left her body and she could see her body and she could see the doctors and all the equipment, and then she floated up and then she went outside the building, and she said, it was the weirdest thing. I saw a blue tennis shoe on the outside of a windowsill high up on the building. And then she just thought that was so odd. That's why it stayed in her memory. And then when she came back, she was telling the ER nurse about that. She said this was so weird. I mean, I saw the light and I felt the warmth and all that kind of stuff. But this thing that stayed in my mind was this blue shoe. Why was this blue shoe on a windowsill? And this nurse went and scoured the entire hospital, and she found the shoe. And it was on the 4th floor of a building, outside the window, on the windowsill. And it was a completely different wing from where the lady was who crossed over and came back. So this, to me, would indicate that we have consciousness outside the body. So obviously that would have to translate to that's what spirits are. It's a continued consciousness from a body that ceased to exist. But they have perception. She saw the shoe, and she also could see herself rising and see the building getting smaller as she went up and see the people down below her as she rose up in the operating room. So that would answer a whole lot of questions if this is right about spirits, and could open a lot of doors into where to go next. In other words, why, the question was, why do we want to study the paranormal if we're going to die anyway? Well, there's so many reasons. If we find out for sure that's what happens, our consciousness goes on, we keep going on, then the next logical thing would be, let's find out how to accurately communicate. Because we know they're there, then we now know they can perceive us, if this is the case. I mean, this isn't 100% proven, but the studies are leaning that way. So if they can perceive us, they can see us, they can hear us, and maybe then they can talk to us or communicate in some way, which, maybe where EVPs and things like that are coming from. Mm-hmm. It's exciting. It will blow the whole field wide open. There would be no reason to stop studying it. There would be every reason to study it more.
Yeah, especially if, hospitals are doing it and recording these studies. And like I was saying earlier, there are studies out there, and some in the medical field are saying up to 10 to 15 minutes, even 30 minutes later, they find this little ball of energy at the base of the neck, and they're not sure exactly what it is because there's really nothing there to hold something like that. And then the most recent one I saw about 3 days ago is showing that, there are brain waves up to 15 to 20 minutes after someone dies. And so they're trying to figure out what exactly is going on there. Is that the time where, the out-of-body thing is happening and they're going to the light or whatnot? Like, where are these brain waves coming from? It's pretty interesting. And like you said before, like the more we study it, the more questions we get. But if the medical field is getting into this, that
means there's something there.
Yeah.
That means there's something there to find, and they know it.
Yeah, and there's so many nurses and doctors that don't always talk openly about it, but in some different chat forums or whatever, I'm a doctor or I'm a nurse, they won't say their name. They have this certain, catch name like Kit Kat or Trippin' Fool or whatever, and they'll tell their stories so they don't get fired, because a lot of people do get fired due to these things because of closed-minded people. But if they could get behind it, I mean, that would open up a whole nother door to this realm for us, I believe.
Yeah, well, like I said, my wife has been a geriatric nurse for more than 30 years, and she's been around dying people basically her entire career. And she says, again, she doesn't like to talk about it, but she'll tell me about it every now and then. She'll go, George came to see me last night. I saw him, and he said goodbye, and things like that. And she's experienced so many things like that, it's commonplace to her. She goes, yeah, I know exactly what happens when people die, and other loved ones come to get them. A bunch of them will sit up and smile and reach out towards somebody who's not there, or that the people can't see. And, so it's so commonplace to her that she doesn't really discuss it much, again, because of the stigmas attached to it and people being closed-minded about it. But she's experienced it, and she says, yeah, it's just 100% natural. I mean, it's no big deal. You do go on afterwards, and I've seen them go on, and they've come back, a lot of them, because all of her patients love her, so when they pass on, they generally come back to say goodbye. So
that's so cool. I have a friend, and I'll use his fictitious name, Jack Mackerel, and he's died 5 times due to heart attacks, and the last time he said he was dead for more than 15 minutes, and he did receive a little bit of brain damage due to that, so he'll tell you the same story over and over again. But he's confused and perplexed because when he passed, he had the whole not the whole out-of-body experience. He said it was just dark, but he could hear what was going on around him. He could hear what the doctors and the nurses were saying, and he would reiterate it to them after he came back, and they're like, wow, you were gone. How could you even hear that? But he did. But he's confused and perplexed because nobody came for him. He didn't see the light after death and all these other things. And to me, in my thought process, I'm thinking because it wasn't your time to go, and that's why these things didn't present themselves to you. But he's just like, how come I haven't seen anything? Why haven't I had paranormal experiences? Like, I've died 5 times, last time for over 15 minutes. What's going on here? I just think it wasn't his time.
He didn't die enough.
Yeah.
I mean, as crude as that may sound, yeah, I think so, because again, in these studies, it seems like most of the people that are coming back, that they're doing interviews with, describe a process. They don't instantly see light. They a lot of times see themselves floating up, and it takes a while. It's not instantaneous. So maybe he just isn't far enough removed from his body to make the journey.
Yeah. So Trip in the chat room is asking, why does Rich think colleges like Duke hide their teachers' students' research? Duke has done one research program and closed program, and I think that is as far as the paranormal.
I think just for the same reason that a lot of people don't talk about this stuff in the professional world. Now, my wife is a nurse, a geriatric nurse, and been around dying people her entire life, and they outside of talking to their friends and me, and they don't talk to anybody about it because there's so much stigma attached to it. A lot of people are closed-minded about it. There's a lot of religious groups that really don't want us to know that we go on. I mean, I don't want to get into theology here and that kind of thing, but there's a lot of people who want to control what we know, and things that disrupt the status quo upset them, and they don't like things out of left field like that. If we all find out that, death is not the end, that there is life after death, then all of a sudden people are going to start behaving differently, and people who are in control are going to lose control, and bad things are going to happen, and maybe some good things will happen. But the universities are funded by government and private donors, and they have basically they're looking at their bottom line the entire time. If something happens to interrupt their money flow, they're not going to be happy, and they in some cases may have to shut down. So they control information and studies, and they're going to continue to do that the same way the governments do, because they don't want to panic. They don't want to upset the general population. Some people will jump out of windows if they think there's ghosts for real.
Yeah.
So it's just like the fake UFO scare in the 30s. People the War of the Worlds and Mars Attacks type of thing. People
the
were
radio
jumping
show.
out of windows. Yeah, they were oh, this is it. It's the end. And some people can't handle things like that. So large institutions, governments and educational institutions and medical institutions hide a lot of things because they don't think we're ready for it. Maybe someday when they think we're ready for it, they'll release this information. It's happening gradually in the UFO community. I mean, the government is finally releasing a lot of their stuff, not all of it, but a lot of it, and much redacted. But there's at some point they will figure, well, the public can handle this much, we'll give them this much. But there are things, I'm sure, that they've found that they don't think we're ready for.
Yeah, and I just love the Freedom of Information Act, and when they do release these documents, and 95 to 98% of it is blacked out with black marker, and you're like, wow, thanks for that.
Oh, that's a lot of help. Yeah.
Bless your pointed little heads. Dell in the SOR Space Travelers is asking, or saying, back to Marfa, what would you do to investigate them, and what tools would you take?
Oh, that's a good question. It would have to be a lot of tools dealing with light, light meters, light amplification equipment. The biggest trick with dealing with Marfa is finding the source of the light. If it's an atmospheric condition where light is skipping from one location to the other, in other words, we're seeing a light that looks way close, but it's 100 miles away, it's going to be hard to track down. So it would take a bunch of different equipment in triangulated locations. You would literally have to try to surround where you think this light is coming from and to narrow it down where it is actually coming from and move in from there. You would need all kinds of light spectrum equipment, very expensive stuff, which is not available to us poor folk. So it can be done, but it would take somebody with a lot of money. It would take an educational institution probably, or a governmental institution to use the kind of equipment needed to track down a light source like that.
I'm not educated on the Marfa lights, but, sometimes people talk about seeing lights and stuff like that, and a lot of times it's attributed to like swamp gas or different other things like that. But other times, they move around in different formations and they're seen repeatedly. There's one in Washington when I was a kid that I saw, and it's like, where is this light coming from? Like, there's so many different things it could be. Is it paranormal or is it just, some form of nature bouncing around? But, how do you really pick those up? I watched a video the other night, and they were in this little canyon somewhere, and it's, there's tons of trees, and I think they're looking for Bigfoot or other things like that, and then all of a sudden they see this blue light bouncing around, and he's actually using night vision and is trying to figure out what exactly that was that would come through his night vision. And people on the other end of the walkie-talkie are saying, well, was it a reflection from the lights in the background, or was it this, or was it that? But, that would show up as a green light. So being that it was blue and it was, bouncing around, and it wasn't, looking at it, it wasn't a reflection of the background lights, because he was pretty steady and focused. He was a good cameraman. And so, it's not just the glare or flare or whatever off of a light in the background. It looks like somebody walking through the trees. So those are interesting things that happen and make us question, our world. And sometimes people are thinking it's a, like, what is the name for it? Alternate world or alternate universe or something coming through in a certain point in time or whatnot. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think it is paranormal, or could it be some sort of parallel universe?
Well, the whole multiverse thing to me is pretty deep. I mean, obviously there are possibilities for anything. Anything is possible. Einstein had theories about alternate universes, and several other scientists have too. Mathematically, it's possible. It could be possible. I mean, how would we know? You talk about trying to find answers for the paranormal. That's the ultimate paranormal, and it's probably, if it does exist, it would be completely normal. We just have never perceived it. But if that's the case, it could answer a lot of questions, weird things like that, like the balls of light you saw and the Marfa lights and things like that. If we're getting a bleed through from a coexisting parallel dimension type of thing that's bleeding over somehow, I mean, that could explain a lot of things. It could explain a lot of the UFO sightings. It could even explain ghosts and things like that. It may be something we're just perceiving incorrectly because we don't know anything about the other universe or the possibilities. So it's possible, sure. I mean, and how would you ever find something to measure that, though, and prove it? I mean, geez, that's deep. It's good. It's a theoretical concept and is entirely plausible. I don't know if it could ever be proved to be possible, but doesn't mean it's not possible. It might well be. We could be living alternate universes at the same time. I mean, there's so many possibilities out there. It's so hard for our tiny human minds to get around living in one world. I think living in multiple worlds would just be more than we can deal with.
Yeah. Trip, going back to your story about the blue shoe on the windowsill, he says, hospital 4 floors up? What the F is a shoe doing on a ledge of a place that doesn't have windows that don't open? Would be asking, where's the other shoe and how the hell did one get outside? Was it on the inside of the window and they saw it?
Supposedly it was on the outside, I think.
Wow.
I mean, he just said it was on the windowsill, and she saw the outside of the building, so I'm assuming she meant it was on the outside of the windowsill.
So was this,
we don't know that those windows didn't open. It could have been an older hospital that had old windows that did open, so I don't know. But the fact that she was clinically dead and medically dead, that she still had the perception to see the building and the shoe, and even the operating room and the doctors. She could perceive that without eyes. She's outside her body, looking down, but her body is on the table with the eyes closed. So that, to me, is a bigger mystery than the shoe itself. But the fact that the shoe was found and proved to exist is fascinating, because that means she obviously did see it. Somehow she perceived that shoe there, and she perceived that whole building and rising up out of the building, flying up into the sky, and so that to me is fascinating. And if this can be proven to be true with this study or these series of studies or even different studies, then that opens up a big door.
Yeah, and it's interesting because you were talking about hospitals doing these different experimental techniques and stuff. What are people seeing and not? I think this was pre-hospital investigations and putting certain objects in place for people to see. And the first thing that came to mind when you told me about the one blue shoe in the windowsill is perhaps somebody that got hit by a car. You hear a lot about people getting hit by cars or whatnot, and they get knocked out of their shoes, or one shoe flies off or whatever due to the G-forces or whatnot. Perhaps it was a shoe of somebody that was fighting for their life, and I don't know why they put that shoe outside the window, but that's...
Or maybe somebody was sitting on the roof and dangling their feet over and lost a shoe. Who knows?
Yeah.
Or maybe they fell. I mean, there's the shoe to me is not important in the story as much as the fact that a dead person saw the shoe.
Mm-hmm.
So,
that's the important part.
That my takeaway from that is that indicates there's consciousness past death and outside the body. So that leaves a whole possibility for everything we've been looking for.
Indeed. Kit Kat in the chat room is saying, I've died, went through black and white tunnel, and ended up back in the famous white room. I was given a choice to stay or come back. I came back because my ex was pleading for me not to die. I made it back. Spiritual life explodes. Now I work with SOR. Now my question is, how many people who have not passed are involved with investigations? Likewise, would you rather have you noticed a noticed and operating your equipment having greater success with data accumulation? Perhaps she's saying, going through that process, would you get more data accumulated?
I don't know. I can't say because I haven't died myself yet. So I think for me that's the main reason I do it the way I do. I mean, the only way I have a possibility of verifying any of these experiences for myself is from data collection. I mean, that's the only thing I have to look at. I mean, I have videos of things happening, even things that I didn't see happen at the time, but they're there on the video afterwards. So for me personally, that's the only way I can experience it. So I have to collect data. For someone who has passed, who may or may not be more sensitive to it, I would think you would be. If you've passed and come back, I would think you'd have some kind of residual connection going on, but maybe not. I mean, you were talking about your other friend who doesn't have any experiences, although he's passed 5 times. So I don't know. I mean, it's probably different with every individual, just like everything else is. People have different sensitivities to different things. So possibly you wouldn't need to collect data, and then maybe you would. I don't know.
Yeah, my sister, neighbor Lisa, she's actually seen the light and seen her loved ones and all these other things, and came back. I mean, I think everybody has different experiences, and it's for different reasons. But yeah, she has Asperger's, and she's very fragile and very pure as far as her thoughts and her deeds, and she's a very pure soul and very loving person and very fragile, like I said before. But she has experienced the loved ones on the other side and seeing the light and getting to the gates, and they told her it wasn't her time, so she went back. There's so many different variations and different stories, and it's so intriguing to me, like what they go through. I haven't died yet. I've come very close to it, and I've also known people that have had accidents and sustained head injuries, and after that they were able to predict things like earthquakes in other countries. And one of the things that it was my father-in-law, he predicted these tunnels under the border where these trucks that were like semi-sized trucks were able to drive through, and then about 3 or so months later, you see it on the news. Like, he did so many things like that. It was amazing. So I do think, near-death experiences or even dying and coming back experiences can open up certain windows for people. But then, Jack Mackerel, he's over there like, when's it my turn?
I think it's just different for everybody. I mean, just in the same way we have different personalities and different sensitivities to different things in our environment, I think that we're going to have different experiences with death and the afterlife as well. Everybody, it's a personal thing. It's probably the most personal thing. I think we're all going to experience it differently and in a profound personal way. And so I don't think there may be similarities with a lot of groups of people, and there are, but for everyone it's going to be a very personal thing. So I don't think there's any way to predict how it's going to happen for everybody. I think each one's going to be different.
I agree. And even on the other side, every story is different, and we've never come across the same story for different spirits. Like, it's always a different story. And generally at the beginning of the 3rd hour, I'll put out there, we're open up for phone calls. So if any of our listeners out there have any questions for Rich, or have any experiences, please give us a call at 1-970-335-9596, 1-970-335-9596. And that is a very intriguing situation, and we could talk about it all night. But I want to know more about what you do as far as your lights. Like, I'm really intrigued. I know you came into it because of, getting frustrated with the lighting when you're trying to film something. How did you come across the technology that you have to create these amazing lights?
Oh, basically, I developed it myself. I was in a group at the time. It was one of the early groups I was with, and the state-of-the-art of night vision cameras was okay. It was the Sony night shot cameras were available and worked extremely well, but they only had that little onboard LED, which is absolutely useless. So I started researching IR infrared technology, and in particular as it pertains to cameras and the way infrared cameras work. And through doing that, I found ways to increase the amount of infrared that could be used in a lighting system, and started exploring how to make them more and more powerful, because early on I found out the obvious thing now is that the more IR light you have, the better your scene's going to be illuminated. So I started looking into technologies that would increase that exponentially, because the basic IR light and IR LED bulb only has so much capabilities, and you can only use so many of them, and then you require a different power source. Well, I started looking into a few years back, high wattage LEDs came out, and they were first embraced by the security field, because they work great with night vision security equipment. And but they were large, bulky, and they get very hot, and they required AC electricity. So I started doing research on the LEDs themselves, and then started researching power supplies and different circuit diagrams and so on, and came up with working possibilities, and spent probably about 2-3 years from about 2010 to 2012. Developed the high power lights and put the first battery powered high power lights available out, and they just took off like wildfire, because they worked so great for me. Immediately all my friends wanted them, then other groups wanted them, and then the word got out, and now we're selling worldwide, but even way beyond the paranormal. We sell to a lot of different organizations and disciplines. But that was it. Is basically the quest for better lighting, so I could get better video. I mean, I've caught so much better things by having a good clean scene. I can see what's there and what's not, and I can eliminate false positives. It's easy to see now when somebody walks into the scene. It's not some blurry possible shadow man. It's obviously, hey, one of our investigators, and that helps so much. And plus, I've been able to see things, objects that move on their own that I couldn't see before. I mean, I'm sure things have happened that we've never been able to document because the film was too grainy. But now it's crystal clear because of the high power lighting, and I can see exactly what's going on. I can see if something tiny moves or something large moves, I've found shadow figures that weren't attached to people. They were just shadow things moving. And so it was a quest for better lighting and better filming, because basically when you're trying to prove the existence of something, you want to have a good quality image as you can. I mean, a grainy image is a grainy image, and you can guess what that is, or you can have a clear quality image and you know what that is. And so I've always been the one who wants to go for a bit more quality, and just kept working, pushing the boundaries. And now, I mean, I'm putting out 45-watt lights and 60-watt lights and 80-watt lights. And for people who need them, I mean, a lot of people don't need that kind of power, but it's there, it's available, and I've developed the technology to make it possible and make it available to the public.
Yeah, I think it's awesome what you've done and how you've excelled in that field. Moonlight in our chat room is wondering, what is Rich's storefront? Do you have a store, or are you online?
Yeah, actually, no, I don't have a brick-and-mortar store. I'm strictly online. You can go to ghostlightco.com, and that's where Ghost Lights can be found. It's Ghost Light with the L-I-G-H-T, not L-I-D-E, and then C-O for Colorado. So ghostlightco.com, and you can see everything I'm putting out right now. And I'm constantly working on new stuff, so it changes quite a bit. But it became a passion of mine. I mean, it started out as a necessity, and now I just love it. And I keep trying to find new and more powerful lighting, and make it cheaper and more reliable, and all the things I would want in a light, because I use all my lights. So and I make a lot of custom lighting. And the most exciting, well, not most exciting, but one of the really cool things is it's branched out into other areas. And now I've actually sold to a number of people who do anti-poaching in Africa and in in Mexico. People who poach sea turtles and stuff. Anyway, these groups who arrest poachers and film them when they're trying to poach. are using my lights now, and all kinds of people. I've got forensic scientists that use them, and do a lot of custom work for law enforcement and that type of thing, as well as movie and TV people.
Do you find that UV works better than IR, or IR works better than UV? What picks up more as far as the paranormal?
Well, that's a tough one, because for me, I want a clear, clean image, and to get that, IR works way better than UV. The reason being is IR reflects like white light does. It bounces off of everything and comes back to the camera, and that's how you get a good image. Is the more light coming back, it illuminates the scene. UV, unfortunately, it puts out the same amount of light, but most of it doesn't come back. A lot of objects and materials will actually absorb UV light, so it's not bouncing back to the camera as much. So UV always looks dimmer. So it's hard to get a really good, clear scene with UV. You have to use a lot of power on UV to get the same kind of scene you would get in IR with much less power. But that being said, I've seen things in both spectra. IR, I've got anomalies and in particular have seen solid objects being moved by unseen hands. And in UV, I've found weird anomalous things, but the problem with UV is hard to say what they are. Some of them are gaseous, blobby-looking things, and it may be what they are, because the advantage of UV is certain things will fluoresce under ultraviolet waves, and depending on the wavelength, different objects will fluoresce. And in the lower wavelengths, like around the 380, 385 and lower nanometers, certain weird things will fluoresce that you don't normally see in the scene. In other words, when you normally hit a UV light, like a black light, things that you would expect to glow do. Certain like fluorescent paints and certain colors will pop up. But in lower wavelengths, things that you don't see in the scene that will fluoresce. I mean, they're not objects. They don't appear to be solid. They're more gaseous looking things. So mist, maybe blobs, shadows. I can't really describe what they are, but I've seen weird things in UV that I don't experience in any other light.
Yeah, and when I go down to Phoenix, Arizona to visit, I'll bring my equipment, and one of my mom's friends was like, hey, bring your UV light over and we'll hunt for scorpions, because I guess they just glow in the light, like you were saying with the black light.
They're great. They're great for that.
Critter catching.
Yeah, that's one thing people use for, and they're also great for finding bodily fluids. So.
Yeah, and
I mean,
I've heard
if you have a cat that likes to pee somewhere in the house and you can't find it, hit a UV light, you'll find it.
Or when you're staying in a hotel room, if you want to sleep at night, I suggest not using one.
You probably don't want to know what's on your pillow.
Yeah, I've used one in a room before, and like there were spots on the floor, there were spots on the comforter, and I'm just like, I cannot sleep in here. I need a refund. Yeah. What is this all over the place? Is that paint? Is that bodily fluid?
I don't want to know.
I don't want to know. Well, when I was reading your bio, you were saying it's used in everything from movie to TV studios, law enforcement. What really piqued my interest was forensic investigators. And then you just now said it can pick up on bodily fluids. Is that how they use it, to see like blood splatter or other things?
Yeah, there's different wavelengths of light that will cause different types of things to fluoresce or to pop out in a scene. Blue light, certain green lights, but in particularly ultraviolet lights at different wavelengths will cause different things to pop up. And so when they're looking for blood, they want a certain wavelength. When they're looking for like semen or urine and other things like that, they'll want a different frequency or wavelength. But so I've had a couple of investigators, one in Dallas in particular, who had specific requirements in order to custom light, and then some here in Colorado as well. Mm-hmm. And basically you can buy UV or not UV, but forensic light kits. They're really expensive. So these guys had specific requirements, and they didn't want to buy this multispectral light when they only needed certain spectrums for their investigation. So I made them special lights.
That is so cool. Yeah. Ron just said something in the chat room. I'm not going to repeat. Had nothing to do with what we're talking about. He's off the wall sometimes. But yeah, that's interesting. So when you do make these UV and IR lights, do you have it to where, you know, when I do security, which I do night security these days, you know, you can click the light and it's bright, dimmer and dimmer. Do you do your UV or IR lights that way, to where they do have the different levels of light that they need that pick up on different things?
Generally all the IR lights have dimmers on them. Some of the UVs do, some of them don't. It just depends on if it's wanted. Some people, because UV does appear so dim, most of them run it full on all the time. So it's a matter of choice. I make lights custom as well and can customize any of the lights that are shown on the website too. So if somebody wants a specific thing, if they want both dimmers for IR and UV or any variations, I can do all that as well. But for the most part, more people use a dimmer on IR than they do on UV. But yeah, they're available on all the lights.
So I was also reading, you not only create and have excelled in the field of lighting, you create other technology. What else do you do?
Well, that was what I was touching on a little earlier. I've always wanted to look in areas that other people aren't building things. I've built a few custom things. Early on, I made a bear for a team that does the Queen Mary investigations. They do public investigations out there, so they wanted a couple of bears that would react to both EMF and to touch, and so I built them a couple of bears for that. The E-probe that I was describing earlier that detects electric fields, I built that, and currently that's what I'm working on, some variations of that, and also a device that will show you the frequency of EMF waves that are detected. The problem now with most EMF detectors is they just go off when they encounter an EMF, but you don't know what the frequency of that EMF is. If you know the frequency and are familiar with EMF frequencies, you can determine right away what it is you're picking up. So if it's electricity, it's a 60 cycle, it's 60 hertz, that's frequency, then you automatically know that's AC electricity, I don't need to pay attention to it. Or if it's a 320 gigahertz signal, that's, you know, cell phone or Wi-Fi, I don't need to pay attention to that. So I'm working on a device now that it's basically an EMF detector, but it will show you exactly what it's picking up. So you make a more informed decision on whether to pursue that or not.
So it'll tell you like, what level it is?
Yeah, basically people right now spend a whole lot of time chasing, you know, man-made electricity or man-made EMFs, and they don't need to be. They're wasting their time. They could be just, if you could weed out those and not pay attention to them and just pay attention to the ones that are not man-made, then that would save a lot of people time in the field and takes a lot of guesswork out of it. So that's something I'm working on right now.
How do you know which is which?
Well, basically there's actually a catalog of all used frequencies in the EMF spectrum, all man-made ones. Basically, the FCC has a listing of every frequency device allowed. So that's a lot to know. So you don't have to know that, but basically there's certain things you can learn. Very high frequencies are going to be television, microwave, Wi-Fi, or cellular signals. There's certain medium signals that are going to be cordless phones, handheld radios, and that kind of thing. Once you know these basic core areas, you know to weed them out right away. You don't have to pay attention to anything that's in the gigahertz range. You don't have to pay attention to the high megahertz range. You want to look for low frequency stuff. If you see except for 60 cycles, 60 hertz is man-made electricity, unless you're in Europe and then it's 50. But if you see a 10 hertz signal, that's interesting because logically, or in nature, 10 hertz signals don't occur normally, unless it's something associated with an earthquake. So it seems like most of the paranormal things of interest in the data that I've seen has been very low frequency stuff. So some of it's even in the area of infrasound in that area. So basically, you just don't want to pay attention to anything that's man-made, and man-made frequencies are generally very high. So this would be a way to eliminate all that. You could just look at it and go, yep, cell phone. And then, or you look at it and go, oh, this is odd.
Yeah.
And chase that. So that's one thing I'm working on.
So how did you become so intelligent and knowledgeable in this field? Like, did you go to electrician school or anything like that, or is this just trying it out and learning different things?
Yeah, it's all been pretty much just hobby. I mean, it started as a hobby, and it's just kind of blown up from there. But it was just trying to find out things for myself and learn how to work around. I mean, in the early days, there was so much not available. Nowadays, you can buy a really nice EMF meter or different things. But in those days, you had to, all the technology that existed was something that was just taken from another use and being used. Like the K2 meter was designed to find faulty wiring, and it was just, we had to take something that already existed, not for use in the paranormal, and try to use it for paranormal. It wasn't until the millimeter came out that there was an actual device made for paranormal investigation. So, they kind of stemmed from that. I just started experimenting with different stuff to see what might get results and what might find something that I was trying to find. And done a lot of study, a lot of reading on people that have gone before me and worked in scientific areas in the field, doing similar things and trying to learn from what they've learned.
Yeah, one of my biggest heroes is Tesla. Does he have anything besides the Tesla coil that you've seen that you might want to build upon?
No. I mean, Tesla was a genius, and so far beyond anything I could do.
He's amazing.
It's silly. Yeah, but I mean, he's come up with some theoretical things, and I know people have played with the Tesla coil, of course, and there's another device that is used as a recording device that picks up very low frequencies. But generally, there's not a lot. I mean, his area of expertise was trying to find out ways to bring electricity to the masses, and wirelessly. I mean, he came up with some brilliant stuff, and unfortunately, we didn't get much of it.
Well, I think he figured it out, but they just muffled him out because it's all about the almighty dollar and making that money, and they don't want us to all have free energy. They want to control that and charge us for it, and so they just basically killed his spirit. I think that's what really eventually got him. And then go ahead.
They basically killed him. Basically, they made him. He died penniless, and then when he did die, they stole all his work. So
that's what I was about to say. Like, he had all these cases and cases of things, and then you go in and you only find 4 or 5 of them, and the rest of them are gone. Like, where did they go?
Yeah, he was a gift to the world. He was a genius and brilliant, and he wanted people to benefit from that. And unfortunately, the powers that be don't want people to benefit for free. So, and they destroyed him. He was just way ahead of his time. There's I mean, a brilliant man. I love everything that he's done, and I've looked into a lot of it. But I don't think a lot of it would be useful in the paranormal world.
Yeah, and I, people have been recently on the show and stuff talking about the Philadelphia Project, and there's so many people out there that don't believe that it even happened. My grandpa actually has a book on it, and I know, I believe the title was Philadelphia Project, and it has something else in there. But, I know Tesla was involved with that in the beginning, and then he stepped out because, it wasn't set in stone. There was no certain parameters, or, you didn't know what the outcome would be, and the outcome was very
dangerous.
Very, very sad and dire, and, some people survived, but they didn't have a good life that you would want. They had all kinds of different crazy things going on, and other people are sealed in bulkheads and floors and such. We actually have a caller.
Huh.
Let me add them to the group. All right, we have area code 512. Who are we talking to?
This is Dale.
Hey, Dale. How's it going?
Pretty good, pretty good.
Did you have a question?
Oh, are we on?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, yes. Sorry about that. Okay,
it's not
Rick,
the after party yet.
Great invention, guy. If you ever want a doubly to bounce things off of or whatever, Tessa can hook you up with me, and I'd be interested to help. I have a couple questions for you. So are you using smartphones and apps to do the thinking part of, like, you were talking about doing a spectrum analyzer, basically? Sorry, that was a question.
Okay, yeah, sorry. Actually, I kind of avoid phones and that type of thing, basically for the Wi-Fi
that's right, you said that.
and some of the higher frequencies they put out. But what I'm talking about now, and actually once it's developed, I'm going to put it out there if anybody wants to build this, they can. But basically, it's taking dang, it flew right out of my head.
Just move your head around a little bit. You might pick it back up. That's what I do.
A Raspberry Pi or something.
Yeah, it's dang, I could probably reach it. Hold on just a second.
It's a little single board of some sort. Wow, I didn't mean to chase off the rest.
No worries. It's all good.
There we go. Sorry about that. I just had a complete lapse of brain there. Oscilloscope. Basically, it's taking an oscilloscope and hooking it up to a calibrated EMF coil, and being able to detect the frequencies from that.
Old school.
And I actually use a bigger version of that now, but it's so large to carry around and it's really bright in your face in the dark. So I'm working with miniature oscilloscopes that are out. And some of them are working pretty well, some of them are not working at all. So once I get that worked out, I'll throw up the plans, and anybody wants to make them can, because I'm not in this to make the money. So
maybe you could put some sort of globe around it that's got, UV protection or whatnot, where it won't be so offensive to the eyes. Some sort of damper on the light, but it doesn't affect whatever else it does.
Yeah, basically, the most of the newer small ones are pretty nice. They're not as bright. They're LCD instead of LED. The large one I'm using is the backlit LED oscilloscope, and that's just like looking at a TV when you're walking around.
So when you use the ghost light, what you're picking up isn't emitted radiation anymore. It's reflected, right? How does that change? How does that change what you're actually seeing?
Well, basically, it should be identical to what's there. I mean, IR in particular, infrared, acts exactly like white light to a camera, to an IR capable camera. So when you're looking at an object in daylight and taking a picture or a film, the white light is bouncing off that and coming back to the camera, and the CMOS captures it and then interprets it into colors and such, and saves the image. Well, IR works the exact same way. So the only thing is it removes the color information. So basically, you're getting a monochrome playback of what it is you're seeing, but you're seeing pretty much 100% of what's there.
Yeah. Okay. What I meant was, sorry, I didn't say it very well. If you've got like a 1 watt source shining at you, and you shine 100 watt light at it, you're going to completely wash it out, or do you find that doesn't happen?
I see what you're saying. Yeah, actually, it is possible to with excess IR power to wash out certain objects and things, and that's one reason why there's dimmers on all these lights, because a lot of times I don't run at full power. I mean, I want to be able to turn it down, especially when you're looking for light phenomenon. One thing that we've captured over the years, which is really strange, is these little pops of light. It's basically like a firecracker going off, but in very minute form. And I've only encountered these in a handful of places, but they've usually ended up being in very active places. And if the IR is full up, especially a high wattage one, if I got a 40 watt light on that thing all the way up, you're not going to see the pop. So certain areas you do want to turn it down and go dim, yeah. But it depends on what you're trying to see. The reason I go for excess power, for high power, is for when you want to illuminate a scene entirely, especially if you're trying to monitor moving objects and that kind of thing. You want to see exactly what's in that scene. Now, if you're looking for light phenomenon and things like that, you definitely want to turn it down. Or if you're looking at meters in particular, so if you're looking at a millimeter or a REM pod and that type of thing, and you got the light full up, you have the potential to wash out the REM pod's lights, and you wouldn't see them when they go off. So obviously you want to dim it down for that.
Great, thanks. I really appreciate it.
Well, sure, Dale. Good talking to you, man. And if I get something I need bounced, I'll bounce it your way, definitely.
That would be great. That would be fun. Also, my son's a maker, so like he can do all the spectrum analysis stuff on a little bitty, single board computer, and stick that in a box that shields it, and and that'll take like a quarter of a watt or something. So yeah, we should talk.
Yeah, that's awesome. You bet. I love networking.
Heck yes.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks for calling in,
Tessa.
Dale. Thanks so much. You
You're
have
welcome.
a good night, and I hope to hear from you at the after party.
Sounds good. Thank you, Rich.
Thank you,
Have a
Dale.
good night. And I take it back on the whole globe thing. Like, I was picturing it differently. Perhaps if you had like UV goggles or something like that, that would block out that intense light, so it wasn't so harsh. But it's so interesting, like the lighting and everything you can use for videos, photography. Like, I've seen some awesome pictures on your page that people have taken using these lights. Like with mine, like I told you before, like I could use mine and it would like show the bush in front of me and maybe a little bit past that, but it's not going to show a whole building or a whole room unless it's fairly small.
Yeah, and the outside requires more power too. That's one of the things that I found out early on, is because when you're shooting outside, you're not getting all the reflections you do inside. When you're inside, you got floors, ceilings, walls, all firing the IR back at you. Outside, a lot of it's just going out in the air. It's lost in the atmosphere.
Yeah,
so
you
if it
can-
doesn't find something to bounce off of, you're not going to get much illumination.
And you can lose things due to like the humidity in the air or fog or whatever anomaly that is naturally happens, and it can interfere with that. But yeah, like what you've done is so amazing. And like Del was saying, I raised my hand to try out some of these things if you need anybody. I have a team that is so totally willing to, and I'll be the leader.
Be a beta tester.
Yes, I will test this for you and highly recommend it because I know it'll work. Like, you've been doing this for so long, and the things that I've looked up on your website and such, like, I'm like, which one do I choose? And, I was talking to you earlier about the 45 watt, but you were saying you don't really need that much unless you're doing, like, the larger areas, like that bigger building or whatnot, where you're wanting to eliminate the whole space. You could do a smaller light. What would be the best indoor light for a paranormal investigator to use?
Again, that kind of depends on the size area that you're in. Say a normal house, you could probably get away with like my little ADV15 light, which it runs off of 2 9-volt batteries and has 15 10mm IR LEDs on it, and it illuminates a lot. If you're gonna work outside at all, I would definitely go with the Pro Series because they put out a lot more power and you get a lot more light back that way. But bigger places, if you're going to Waverly or something, you're going to want at least a 30 or 40 watt light for that.
That's awesome. Well, we're coming up on our last 20 seconds of the show. Can you believe 3 hours has gone by already?
Man, it was fast.
It is. And, people, when I first talk to them, they're like, 3 hours? I don't know if I can do that. I'm like, I swear to you, we have so much fun and we're so enthralled in what we're talking about. Before you know it, time's up and you want to go longer. But now's the time, Rich, if you'd like to share your website once again and ways for our listeners to contact you. Can you share that information with us?
You betcha. If you want to go to the Ghostlight website, that's ghostlightco.com. And you can also find this on the Facebook. We at Colorado Paratech, just search for Colorado Paratech or Ghostlight, and probably Ghostlight Pro is what comes up on Facebook. And then me, Rich Warren, I'm on there too. And glad to talk to anybody. I love this stuff, and I love talking to people. And I'll help anybody any way I can. So if you have any questions, you just want to chat, whatever, I'm always around.
That's awesome. And do you also have a YouTube page?
I do. It's actually I have to look it up because I opened it way back before I started doing this.
Oh, no
and
worries.
It's under Rich Horn. If you look up Rich Horn under YouTube, you'll find me. My username is actually Renarts, RENARTS 01 on YouTube because I started that a long time ago before I started this. So.
Well, awesome. Thank you so much, Rich. It was so wonderful having you on this evening, and I'm so grateful for you and all the work that you do for our field.
Well, I really appreciate you having me on, Tessa. It's been a blast.
I'd love to hang out with you sometime, like I said, and I'd love to have you on the show again.
Anytime.
All right, you have a good night.
You too as well, and thank you to everybody that listened.
And thank you to everyone in Spaced Out Radio, Facebook, Spreaker, Twitter, Paranormal Radio, TalkStream Live, Deep Talk Radio, and wherever else you may be listening in the universe tonight. I had a wonderful time this evening, and it was my pleasure, literally and figuratively, and I can't wait to do it again tomorrow night for Psychic Sunday, when we'll have Psychic Chris Garcia on, and you can only find that on spacedoutradio.com. Don't forget, we are all in this together. Together, we can make the world a little better. And together, my friends, we own the night. Until next time, nighty-night, love and light to all my space cases out there. You guys have a wonderful rest of your Sunday morning. I hope to see you at the after party, 1-970-335-9596. And I will see you all back here tomorrow night. You guys have a wonderful and blessed evening. Love and light to all of you. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you tomorrow.